Hello, and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's public hearing for Thursday, January 24th, 2019. My name is Kim Clark-Baskin, and I'm your Deputy City Clerk. With us today, we have our sign language interpreter, Amber Baylor. The following is a list of legislation to be heard by Pittsburgh City Council. Bill number 1218. This bill is sponsored by Mr. O'Connor, Mrs. Strasburger, Mr. Kraus, Mr. Lavelle, Reverend Burgess, Mr. Coghill, and Ms. Gross. An ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances at Title V, Conduct, Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by repealing the existing language of Chapter 607, Firearms, Ammunition, and Other Weapons, in its entirety, and replacing it with the new Chapter 607, General Firearm Conduct, to update existing laws to meet the public safety needs of residents. Bill number 1219. This bill is also sponsored by Mr. O'Connor, Ms. Strasburger, Mr. Kraus, Mr. Lavelle, Mr. Burgess, Mr. Coghill, and Ms. Gross. An ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances. Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by adding Chapter 610, Ban on Specified Firearm Accessories, Ammunition, and Modifications, to place a prohibition on certain firearm accessories, ammunition, and modifications. Bill number 1220. This bill is sponsored by Mr. O'Connor, Mrs. Strasburger, Mr. Kraus, Mr. Lavelle, Reverend Burgess, Mr. Coghill, and Ms. Gross. Bill number 1220. An ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title IV, Conduct, Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by adding Chapter 603, Extreme Risk Protection Orders, to provide for appropriate injunctive actions for the preservation of public safety in extreme circumstances. And Bill number 1240. Petition from the residents of the City of Pittsburgh requesting a public hearing before City Council relative to Councilman Bruce Krause's ordinance and amendment, supplementations, and repeals pertaining to the December 18th, 2018 agenda items, Bill number 1218, 1219, 1220. This petition is valid in accordance with the Home Rule Charter. That concludes the reading of the legislation to be heard by Pittsburgh City Council. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Am I on? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this public hearing of Pittsburgh City Council. Am I on? Okay.
There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this public hearing of Pittsburgh City Council for today, Thursday, January 28th, 2018. I would like the record to reflect that we are joined by Councilwoman Kell Smith, Councilman Coghill, Councilwoman Harris, Councilwoman Strasburger, Councilman O'Connor. My name is Bruce Kraus, and I am this evening's chair of this public hearing. With that, our tradition is to read the purpose of the bill. If you'll bear with me for one moment, I'll pass this microphone to the clerk to read the purpose of the bills for this public hearing. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Okay.
Bill number 1218,
an ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances at Title VI, Conduct Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by repealing the existing language of Chapter 607, Firearms, Ammunition, and Other Weapons, in its entirety, and replacing it with a new Chapter 607, General Firearm Conduct, to update existing laws to meet the public safety needs of residents. Bill number 1219, an ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances at Title VI, Conduct Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by adding Chapter 610, Ban on Specified Firearm Accessories, Ammunition, and Modifications, to place a prohibition on certain firearm accessories, ammunition, and modifications. Bill number 1220, an ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances at Title VI, Conduct Article 1, Regulated Actions and Rights, by adding Chapter 603, Extreme Risk Protection Orders, to provide for appropriate injunctive actions for the preservation of public safety in extreme circumstances. Bill number 1240, petition from the residents of the city of Pittsburgh requesting a public hearing before City Council relevant to Council President Bruce Krause ordinance, amend supplementations, and repeals pertaining to the 12-18-18 agenda items 12-18, 12-19, 12-20, Title 6, 607, 610, and 603. The petition is valid in accordance with the Home Rule Charter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The order of tonight's meeting will be as follows. We will take registered speakers first in the order in which they arrived. Each registered speaker will have 3 minutes in which to address the council. When the green card is flashed, it will show the beginning of your 3 minutes. When the yellow card is flashed, you'll have 1 minute to summarize your thoughts. When the red card is flashed, you will then need to relinquish your time to make way for the next speaker. After we have exhausted the list of registered speakers, we will take those speakers that chose not to register. You will be afforded 1 minute to speak to the council. Again, the yellow card will flash at the beginning of your 1 minute. The red card will flash when your time then has expired. I would like to begin by taking our first registered speaker. I am going to ask that you give us your name, the municipality, township, or borough in which you reside. If you say City of Pittsburgh, I'm going to clarify. If you say Pittsburgh, I'm going to clarify if that is City of Pittsburgh. Ma'am, may we take you as our first registered speaker? May I have your name to begin?
My name is Karlyn VanBaan, B-A-N, and I am a resident of the City of Pittsburgh.
Thank you. Please begin.
I am the chair of the Social Action Committee of Congregation Dor Hadash and head of the steering committee of a new organization, Squirrel Hill Stands Against Gun Violence. As you know, on October 27th, a gunman came crashing into a synagogue where my congregation met, yelling, "Kill all the Jews." He was armed with an AR-15 and 2 handguns, and he killed 11 people and injured several more, some very severely, some of whom were my close friends. It's hard to convey the level of trauma caused by the shooting, of course, for the families of those killed and those who were injured. But the effect of this terrible massacre have been both broad and deep. It affected not just our congregations, not just the Jewish community in Pittsburgh, but people all across our community and around the world. And there was a revulsion that led people to stand up and say, no, this is not who we are. We are a strong, caring, and tolerant community. In the face of this attack, we have come together to say, enough. No more mass murder. It is time for the U.S. to get serious about reducing gun violence. Ideally, we would do this at the national level, but that's not happening. Nor has it happened at the state level, at least in this state. So it's necessary to start at the local level to stand up against the scourge of weapons and the extraordinarily high level of gun violence in our society, in our city. We had a tragedy, but the community, especially the Black community, has an epidemic of gun violence, and we cannot keep ignoring it. Let me briefly address the proposed legislation. We strongly support banning the sale and ownership of semi-automatic assault rifles and related equipment. These are military weapons and have no place in the hands of civilians. We also support legislation to keep guns out of the hands of people in crisis who are making credible threats of violence or who threaten suicide, with a procedure that protects due process. Finally, we need to support our state representatives who are working to amend the Uniform Firearms Act to allow both Philadelphia and Pittsburgh to pass their own laws. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. May we have our next registered speaker, please? Please, ma'am, please. Thank you. May we have your name?
My name is Miriam Dearie.
Thank you. And you reside?
City of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
I come here tonight to speak as a citizen, as a mother, as a neighbor, and as a psychologist. In my neighborhood, in fact, in the last 2 weeks, I ran across a neighbor who, in passing, told me that he had been out at a sporting goods store and he had decided to buy an AR-15. I was taken aback. I had not known that this man, I knew he had hunted, but I didn't know anything about the AR-15s. And I asked him, why did he want an assault weapon? And he said, well, because I can get one. I went up to the counter, I put my money down, and they gave me the assault weapon. What I do know about this Pennsylvania is that we have no waiting period, and that background checks are often foregone if they cannot happen immediately.
Active information there.
As a psychologist, I can tell you that there are plenty of people who have both issues that are immediate, as in they have had an extremely stressful occasion, or such as finding someone that they trusted cheating on them, or they've had an argument with a family member, and to be able to buy a gun impulsively is setting ourselves up for violence to happen among our citizens. This man in particular, I knew, had told me there was a little unhappiness at home in his marriage, and he was dissatisfied with his work situation. I left this encounter saying goodbye, and I thought to myself, what is my responsibility here? This man has just bought himself an AR-15 in a day. Is anyone in danger? Is his wife in danger? Is his workplace in danger? I think that at this time, we do not have enough checks and balances to have these kinds of weapons available to people like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. May we have our next registered speaker, please? Good evening, sir. May I have your name and your...
My name is Richard Agni. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Richard.
Good evening. I live in Squirrel Hill. I'm a volunteer for Ceasefire PA. I'm also coordinator of Amnesty International Group 39. Amnesty International is a human rights organization. At its most fundamental, gun violence is a human rights issue. We have a human right to live and work in our neighborhoods without fear of gun violence. We have a human right to attend church, synagogue, and concerts without fear of gun violence. Our children have a human right to attend school without fear of gun violence. Many of us are here because of the intolerable level of gun violence in our society. Some have lost a loved one or relative or friend to homicide or suicide. Some may have a friend or relative who was killed or injured at Tree of Life Synagogue. Some are here simply because they fear gun violence. Perhaps they are afraid for their children or grandchildren or a friend. Their fears are well-founded. Here are a few sobering statistics for the U.S. as a whole. On average, 306 people are shot every day, about 111,000 per year. About 33,000 per year are killed through gun violence. 34% of these are homicides, 63% are suicides. The rate of gun deaths for blacks is about twice the rate of gun deaths for whites. Fewer than 10% of people who attempt suicide with a gun survive. The U.S. gun violence death toll between 1968 and 2011 eclipses that of all wars ever fought by our country. For Pennsylvania, the statistics are also just as grim. In 2016, there were 1,555 deaths from gun violence in Pennsylvania. A police officer is fatally shot in Pennsylvania every 6 months, while an assault with a firearm against police occurs every 2 days. Yearly, there are about 11.9 gun deaths per 100,000 people in Pennsylvania. Violence is a thread that is woven throughout all of human history. The reasons for this are complex, multifaceted, and probably not completely understood. Violence is certainly not unique to the United States, but violence in the U.S. is in general much more lethal due to the prevalence of firearms. While common sense gun laws won't cure our society from this violence, common sense gun laws can reduce the number of fatalities. I support Pittsburgh City Council's efforts to pass common sense gun violence prevention laws. It is my strong belief that the statutes proposed do not infringe on legitimate Second Amendment rights. I recognize that these proposed statutes may conflict with state statutes, but if those state statutes are causing loss of life, they must be challenged. I encourage City Council to do this. More guns are not the answer to this issue. Common sense gun laws are not the complete answer either, but they will make our communities safer. They are a start. They are a step we must take if we are going to solve this problem, if we are ever going to stop the carnage. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to continue to remind you that if there are people that are waiting in line that have registered that might have difficulty waiting, we're asking for your courtesy to please allow them to move to the front of the line. Welcome, sir. You're our next registered speaker.
Thank you. My name is Ian Davis, and I am from McKees Rocks.
Thank you, Ian.
I'm a personal defense instructor here in the greater Pittsburgh area. Among many other classes, I teach a class called Countering the Mass Shooter Threat, in which we analyze what we've learned about mass shootings, and then I help organizations understand how to counter the very tragedy we experienced at the Tree of Life. These plans are not based on ideology or emotion, but on data. Whatever the data tells me, I listen, and I help organizations protect innocent lives. This class that I teach is between 4 and 8 hours long. Here I only have time to address a single topic, and then only very briefly. The topic: would restricting so-called high-capacity magazines help? I've chosen this because, mostly starting with Sandy Hook and recently renewed after Parkland, people have strenuously advocated that restriction of the AR-15 style rifle and high-capacity magazine would result in a lower death toll. It's a fair question, and it begs a legitimate analysis. Fact number one: a modern AR-15 style rifle with a 30-round magazine has the capability of a sustained rate of fire of 100 rounds per minute. Fact two: an 1860s style repeating rifle, like the Henry lever action, the kind of thing that John Wayne uses in True Grit, has a tubular magazine just under the barrel with a typical capacity of 8 rounds and has a sustained rate of fire of 30 rounds per minute. Fact three: there have been 50 mass shootings using the FBI definition of a mass shooting, which is 4 fatalities or more, since Columbine, in which 491 people have been killed and 403 people have been wounded. Fact four: the 4 mass shootings who had the highest rate of fire were, in order, Adam Lanza at Sandy Hook, between 15 and 31 rounds per minute. We'll say 31 for the sake of being conservative. Jiverly Wong at Birmingham, 25 rounds per minute. Nadal Malik Hassan, Fort Hood, 21 rounds per minute. Nicholas Cruz at Parkland, 17 rounds per minute. So, AR-15 rifle with a 30-round magazine shoots up to 100 rounds a minute. The 10-round Civil War rifle shoots up to 30 rounds per minute. And the most rapid-fire mass shooting in history of the United States since Columbine has achieved only 31 rounds per minute. Conclusion: given what we have experienced in the 50 mass shootings since Columbine, given that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and all other factors remaining the same, it's unreasonable to conclude that a reduction in the 30-round magazine capacity of the AR-15 will materially contribute to reducing the casualty or death rate of mass shootings. My real concern for the Council And for Pittsburgh,
Ian, I'm sorry, your time has expired. Thank you very much. May we have our next registered speaker, please? May we have our next registered speaker, please? Hello, sir. May I have your name?
George Kness, Moon Township.
Thank you, George. You're welcome to your 3 minutes.
Okay. We got the glasses here.
Please start, sir.
To Mayor Peduto, to Pittsburgh City Council, thank you for allowing the people of Pittsburgh to speak to you about important firearms legislation you are considering before you today. My name is George Kness. I'm a native Pittsburgher, born and raised on the South Side slopes, raised in the projects, and attended Pittsburgh Public Schools, and a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University. I stand before you in support of the common sense legislation you are considering to do comprehensive background checks and limit high lethality arms to the general public. I am an Air Force Cold War veteran, and I am also a Vietnam War veteran, having served there in 1963 and 64. I have experience with the firearm you want to limit from civilian use, the military assault rifle, the AR-15. I was among the very first to use this rifle in Vietnam, and the Strategic Air Command first adopted this weapon ahead of all the other military services. I qualified with the AR-15 in December of 1963. I know this gun, and I know its history. And I grew to learn of this new weapon's lethality, high lethality, in the coming months in Vietnam. This military firearm is specifically designed for killing and maiming people, to take soldiers off the battlefield. It is not designed for hunting. It is not designed for personal protection. Its high rate of fire and ability of the rounds, the bullets, to tumble and tear up human flesh make it an ideal military weapon. If you want personal protection, get a pistol or a shotgun, please. Much less dangerous than a military assault rifle. I'm a member of Vote Vets, who have worked recently to elect veterans to Congress who are working right now for common sense gun control. I'm also a member of Giffords, led by Navy vet and astronaut Mark Kelly and his former Congresswoman wife, wounded Gabby Giffords. Veterans know the high lethality of the weapons and the challenges to public health. They know what qualified civilians can handle. Also, I have skin in this game.
Hey,
I am a father. Sorry.
That's okay, George. Thank you very much for your time. I would, if I could please have your attention. May I please have your attention? We are conducting an official hearing here. I understand there's a lot of energy in the room, and I appreciate it. But if I could just please ask you to keep your voices down so that the council can hear the speakers when they come to the podium, and we would greatly appreciate that. I'd also like the record to reflect that we've been joined by Councilwoman Gross. Sir, may I have your name, please?
Yes. My name is Marshall Cowan. I'm a resident of Shadyside.
Thanks, Marshall. You may begin.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, in Shadyside, and after 50 years of being away, my wife and I decided to come here for retirement because we think it's a wonderful city. On October 26th, I was at a discussion group at the Jewish Community Center in Squirrel Hill, sitting next to a gentleman named Irv Younger. The next day, Mr. Younger was one of the victims of the Tree of Life shooting. I am here because I support the concept of what you all are trying to do with these ordinances, but I have some serious concerns. One, I think that those who are in favor of this ordinance have not really done a very good job of tapping into what I believe is strong support within the city to demonstrate public support for these concepts. But more importantly, I've seen this movie before. And what I worry about is that it's just going to devolve into the same two sides with no outcome that is satisfactory to the problems we're all concerned about. I believe there are good people in this room who own guns and are concerned about their rights and what's going to happen with this process. I believe there are good people in this room, like myself, who don't own guns, but who are concerned about the process that results in tree-of-life shootings and, you know, terror in our malls and our religious institutions and so forth. And I believe that what is missing and what Pittsburgh should try and do differently is to let some of the people in this room on both those sides of the issue begin to have a dialogue themselves about where can we find the answers, notwithstanding what's in the statutes, what the county attorney says, what the mayor says, what the council says, what the state of Pennsylvania has on the books. But can't there be a dialogue where the citizens, we out here, the gun owners and the non-gun owners, can have some way of providing input into here's a way to achieve what we're trying to achieve with respect to public safety and concern for our institutions. So I would urge you strongly, as you consider these kinds of ordinances, to take a look at that process, because I think that process is missing. And even in conversations way back in the line, people were saying, you know, they would like to see some kind of process like that. Finally, I want to thank everybody behind me, because I was way in the back and I have a knee that won't let me stand on it for hours at a time. So people were very gracious in letting me speak. So that's my message to you today, and I hope you'll take some consideration for a greater dialogue than just this kind of hearing. But let some of us try and figure out where some of the solutions might be for the city of Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Marshall. Thank you very much. I want to thank you for being generous and allowing people that would have difficulty waiting in coming to the front of the line to speak as registered speakers. And thank you, and I hope you'll continue to do that. Welcome, ma'am. May I have your name, please?
My name is Diane Saylor Daniels. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a volunteer for Ceasefire PA, and I would mention that I am a native of Somerset County. Back in my native rural Pennsylvania, land of many decent, resourceful, common sense people. Nonetheless, cannot help but say that I was menaced and harassed for having an Obama sticker on my car. I was informed that my liberal views were a threat to religious freedom, in essence because people felt they could not discriminate as they had wished against other citizens of this country. I was also, by the way, told that at least now people are free to use unrepeatable terms in reference to some of those other citizens. Again, those are anecdotal comments, but nonetheless, the irony does not escape me, but many of these same people, and along with many others, who believe that I didn't have the right to bear the name of the President of the United States on my car, that these and other citizens, that other citizens don't have the same rights as they do, are demanding that they and others have the right to drive through any municipality, which they do, I understand that, but that they want to retain the right to drive through any municipality in this state, show up in any public space toting a weapon of war. That the right of an abused woman and her family to feel safe is superseded by the right of any person, no matter his background, to own a gun. And that the right of people to possess a deadly weapon does not carry with it the responsibility to report it lost or stolen and a potential tool for future carnage. This is dangerous, ridiculous thinking, fueled by the NRA, fueled by a propaganda machine, fueled by domestic terrorist groups, and they in turn fueled by foreign enemies who certainly do not have the best interests of our country in mind.
Diane, 1 minute.
Yes. Oh, thank you. It is the type of ridiculous thinking that has led to the election of leaders who are supported by the NRA and foreign enemies who do not have the best interests of our country in mind. We need to say enough is enough. Our people are dying, our children at play, our parents at worship, our loved ones going about their daily lives. And while no gun law certainly ones that aren't enforced, is going to stop gun violence entirely, it is also ridiculous and dangerous thinking to suppose that doing nothing is the way forward. I applaud the City Council for their proposal of these ordinances and for leading the way forward and for saying at last, enough is enough. And we're with you all the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Before we take our next registered speaker, may I ask the media here to move back a little bit? We need to clear this way so people can exit in an orderly fashion. And the remaining, if you would move in, please. Thank you very much. Good evening. May I have your name?
Rob Conroy, City of Pittsburgh.
Okay, thank you. Rob, you have your 3 minutes.
As a City of Pittsburgh resident, as a Pennsylvanian, as an American, and as someone who works every day with Ceasefire PA to make our communities safer, I not only stand in support of, but enthusiastically applaud the ordinances the Council has introduced to help Pittsburghers live free from the beyond pervasive threat of gun violence. 6 years ago, when I heard that 20 children were gunned down in Newtown, I thought 2 things. 1, there could never be a gun-related tragedy that gutted me as much. And 2, surely now would be the time when our state and our federal legislators on both sides of the aisle would be forced to act, that they'd pass legislation to make it more difficult for those who should not have firearms to have firearms cocked and ready to kill people and to kill children. Well, I was wrong on both counts. Among hundreds of other tragedies, Charleston happened, and then the Pulse nightclub happened, and Las Vegas happened, and neither our federal nor our state legislatures did anything to stop the killing. It took another school massacre 5 years later, this time in Parkland, Florida, and the amazing groundswell of activism from students all over the world for our state legislature to finally prohibit domestic abusers from possessing firearms while an active PFA order against them is in place. And that was it, until the Tree of Life massacre on October 27th. 11 devout souls mowed down because they had the temerity to be observant Jews attending Shabbat services. And while nothing can be done to replace those lives lost or heal the physical or psychic wounds of those left behind, when I look at the way every one of our neighborhoods huddled a little closer together, and I consider council's decision to stand up to the gun lobby and its lackeys in our state legislature by introducing the ordinances we're discussing today, maybe, just maybe, I can see a more peaceful future for our city. We need to get assault weapons off the streets. We need to reduce the number of bullets and magazine clips that can be used in so many kinds of weapons, and we need extreme risk protection orders to temporarily disarm at-risk individuals without stigmatizing them. We need these laws in Pittsburgh, and we need to continue to fight to push these initiatives both state and nationwide, and I'm proud of the men and women who lead this city, people like Councilwoman Strasburger, Councilman O'Connor, who have led this particular fight this time around, and who, by introducing these ordinances, are working to forge a statewide coalition around them. And they're standing up to the violence at both Tree of Life and in so many of our neighborhoods on a daily basis. We at Ceasefire PA, and I'm certain a majority of Pittsburghers, support you every step of the way. Legislation isn't the only step towards a peaceful world, but it's a first step to save lives while we address and conquer the root causes of gun violence together. And when neither Harrisburg nor Washington will stand up, it's time for our city to do so. With every right comes a responsibility, and thanks again for doing what you're doing to make the citizens of Pittsburgh safe.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you very much. Could we have our next registered speaker, please? Good evening, sir. May I have your name?
Good evening. My name is Milt Rump. I'm a resident of Carrick in the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
While I understand your need for action in an attempt to solve a very complicated societal problem in the wake of the senseless loss of life during the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, I see this pending legislation as irresponsible. You are wasting your time and city taxpayer money on an issue that is clearly controlled at the state level of government by the Pennsylvania Constitution. This document clearly prohibits local governments from enacting their own firearms legislation. It is also controlled at the federal level of government by the Second Amendment of our nation's Constitution, located within the Bill of Rights. 2 council members removed their names from sponsorship. These bills are a futile attempt of local government at gun control. According to the District Attorney Stephen Zappala, those council members who vote to pass this legislation will have a private criminal complaint filed against them. If your legal department is correct and it is proven that you are immune to prosecution, you will still drag our city into costly litigation for no other reason than a political grandstanding gesture. There are at least several problems present in our city that this money would go a long way to help solve. A few that come to mind would be the opioid epidemic, the homeless, veterans and senior citizens living just above the poverty line. Not to mention that our ancient infrastructure is crumbling beneath our feet. All of these problems definitely fall within your purview. When you consider that we just got out from under federal fiscal review due to the poor financial decisions by a previous administration, your actions could even be viewed as reckless. I believe that the serenity prayer would apply directly here. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You are operating under misguided assumption that if you ban firearms from legal law-abiding citizens, it will somehow make you and our city safer. The quickest, most effective way to stop a bad guy with a gun is having a well-trained good guy with a gun on scene.
Your time has expired. May I have your last? I'm going to remind you only one time. This is not theater. This is an official public hearing of the Pittsburgh City Council. It will be conducted as such. Do you mind, sir? I am asking that you would please be mindful and respectful of everyone's time and everyone's right to be in here and to register comment in an unthreatening environment. I won't say it again. Sir, may I have your name?
Yes, my name is Val Fennell, and I'm from Kennedy Township.
Thank you, Val.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today in opposition to the proposed ordinances restricting firearms. I'm a retired Air Force colonel and physician who was born and raised in McKees Rocks. There is no need for me to rehash that these ordinances are illegal. You know that already, but have decided to defy the law and move forward with them anyway. The message that you are sending to law-abiding citizens is that you can disregard the preemption law, the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and the Bill of Rights. In short, you are advocating lawlessness and creating a mandate for civil disobedience. After all, if the mayor and city council don't have to follow the law, why should we? I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. A retired officer is still an officer of the United States, so my oath never expires. Moreover, as a son of the American Revolution, my direct ancestor fought the British who tried to disarm us. Today, the Redcoats are right here in City Hall, where you are attempting to do the same thing. I didn't serve for 20 years to come home and have politicians trash the Bill of Rights like a pile of garbage. No, I will defend it uncompromisingly with these men and women here today assembled. As a native son of this Commonwealth, I won't rest until your ordinances are defeated and Governor Wolf's gun control agenda is stopped dead in its tracks. But I am not alone. Today I present to you a petition of nearly 8,000 people who either live, work, or do business in the city of Pittsburgh. This petition calls for the City Council to withdraw these illegal ordinances or face criminal prosecution for violations of Title 18, PA Code, Section 5301, Official Oppression, and Section 6120, Preemption. These 8,000 people have also demanded that Allegheny County District Attorney Zappala file criminal charges against the mayor and city council if these illegal ordinances are passed. In fact, I have already delivered a copy of this petition to the DA yesterday.
1 minute,
In
sir.
conclusion, our rights are not up for compromise or discussion. Firearms Owners Against Crime and 8,000 petitioners demand that you withdraw all of these illegal ordinances or face criminal charges.
Sir,
thank you very much.
Thank you. May I have, sir, may I have your last name again, please?
Fennell, F as in Foxtrot, I-N-N-E-L-L.
Thank you. I can spell. Would you leave that with the clerk, please? Thank you. Come on up, Kim.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of council.
I need your name in the township.
My name is Kim Stolfer.
Residing?
I reside in McDonald, Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
I represent many members
That's
in
okay.
Allegheny
3
County.
minutes. Begin.
I come before you today as an experienced person dealing with the city of Pittsburgh. I have tried over the millennia to try and be very fair and very accurate in the constitutional rights we all share, as well as the law. The law is not up for debate. It wasn't when I was in the United States Marines, and neither is the Constitution. And I have to tell you, I categorically reject what you're doing, this demagoguery. This is not only wrong, it's the same kind of demagoguery we've seen in other states. New York, California, Connecticut, Massachusetts, where the crime rates have all gone up. Do the members of council that want to support this want to be responsible for the increase in crime? Do you think the California legislature is responsible for the 18% increase in violent crime? We talk about crimes and heartbreaking incidents, and I share that heartbreak. Everybody in this room does. But that doesn't mean my friends on the Vietnam Wall died to protect the Constitution. So you can enact laws that not only violate the Constitution, but the facts and the reality that these laws will do nothing. And they're not meant to do anything. This is political pandering at its worst. If you want to fix the crime problem in this state and in this country, you need to look at how we treat criminals. Go across the street and watch how we plea bargain gun charges away. Go take a look at what we do to the criminals once they are sentenced, where they take and minimize the punishments they're supposed to get. My colleague, Val Fennell, told you about the illegality. So I'm going to show you something about the history of Pittsburgh. Since 1993, Pittsburgh has violated Pennsylvania law numerous times. Not only of the preemption law back in 1993, but also when the G7 summit came here with the lost or stolen laws. There's a reason why you haven't prosecuted anyone. You want to discuss and argue about the right to bear arms and its impact on Constitution.
1 minute.
And the gun control issue, I'm happy to debate that, but realize one thing. We will hold you accountable for violating Pennsylvania preemption law. I helped write it in 1993, House Bill 187, and I will make sure you're accountable to it. We do not have the ability as citizens to allow government to get out of control. We are not Venezuela. And if you all think that you can do this with impunity, I suggest you think again. I will not tolerate that as a United States Marine. This is my country. You work for us, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, I want to add this into the official record, if it's okay with you, Council President.
Present to the clerk. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jen. Welcome. Hi, welcome. And may I please remind you again, I understand the energy in the room. It makes it very difficult for us to hear the speakers. If you just please try to keep your voices down. We want to hear you, but we can't. Thank you very much. May I have your name?
I'm Abigail Siegel. I'm a City of Pittsburgh resident.
Thanks, Abigail.
Hello, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a sophomore at Taylor Alderdice High School. I fully support the proposed package of common sense gun safety bills. According to Gun Violence Archive, there were 17 incidents of gun violence in Pittsburgh in the first 22 days of 2019. 5 people have been killed and 8 people injured. 5 Pittsburgh lives did not deserve to end, yet our lax gun laws so horrifically allowed them to. One of those killed was Jonathan Freeman, a teenager who attended my school, Taylor Alderdice. I did not have the pleasure of knowing him, but my community collectively grieved for his loss, just as we had after the Tree of Life massacre. The day after John Freeman's death, rumors spread around Alderdice about an unrelated threat to shoot up the school. The possibility that someone would walk into the school with a perfectly legal gun but unleash terror into our classrooms was very real, and it still is. Such a horrific act had happened in October, just a few blocks away from the school, so why couldn't it happen again? Already reeling from the murder of our peer, I stayed home the day of the supposed threat, along with about 2/3 of the student body. That's hundreds of kids missing school because gun violence has become so plausible to us, so ordinary. At this point, the only thing that stands between Pittsburghers getting shot or not is luck. We are at the mercy of chance whenever we leave home, and for too many victims of domestic violence, even inside our own house. Do we as a city want to rely on the hope that we'll make it to tomorrow? That's all we have to protect us. Guns are too prevalent in our society, and it has come down to the city of Pittsburgh to protect its citizens because it's clear that our state and federal governments won't. Gun violence plagues Pittsburgh, and the city has a moral obligation to do all it can to prevent its further damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you. May I have your name, please?
My name is Maya Schupp, and I'm a resident.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear.
My name is Maya Schupp, and I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
We're going to adjourn the meeting if they don't quiet down. We don't do this in chamber. We don't do this in chamber.
My name is Maya Schupp, and I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
Thank you for holding this very important hearing and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I live in Squirrel Hill and I am a sophomore at Alderdice High School. I'm also a co-founder of a Students Demand Action for Gun Sense in America chapter at my school. Last year, I watched in horror as a gunman murdered 17 at a high school in Parkland, Florida. Observing this tragedy motivated me to attend the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. I was moved by the stories from both Parkland students and young people nationwide who had experienced gun violence. I felt their emotion and was inspired by their call to action and their refusal to sit by as lawmakers continuously ignored the problem. But Parkland was far away, and I was privileged to live in a community where gun violence did not occur. I didn't have to grieve the loss of loved ones. I did not have to watch my community try to rebuild after tragedy. I could not imagine that pain and grief until my community was overcome with the same pain and grief. As you all know, on October 27th, a gunman murdered 11 of our neighbors at the Tree of Life Synagogue just a mile from my house. Because of this tragedy and the international media attention that came from it, Pittsburgh has a unique opportunity to be a leader in pushing gun reform. I believe that in Squirrel Hill, despite all that we have endured, we are in a privileged position. We don't face gun violence on a day-to-day basis, but we face something that many people don't know what it's like to face. Now we must channel our pain and grief into leading this change. And while we do this, we must acknowledge that gun violence is an epidemic affecting communities nationwide. It extends far beyond headline news and into the everyday lives of Pittsburghers. 2 weeks ago, my classmate Jonathan Freeman was shot and killed just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I didn't know Jonathan personally, but I watched at an assembly held at my school last week as students choked up as they recounted their memories with him. I watched as his family, suffering unimaginable grief, knowing that as we fall back into our daily routines, their lives will never be the same. No one should ever have to go through that. There's not just one answer to solving this problem, but these common sense gun reform bills are a much needed start. Last year, I watched students all across the country in the face of tragedies willing to do whatever it takes to end gun violence. I've watched students in my school do their part to ensure that tragedies like what happened at Tree of Life and to Jonathan Freeman don't happen again. I'm here to be a part of this movement and I'm not going away. I will do my part. Now I hope you will do yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. May I have your name, please?
My name is Luke Changmin. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Luke. Luke Changmin. Thanks, Luke.
Good evening. I live in Squirrel Hill, and I'm a sophomore at Taylor Alderdice High School.
Hey, John. Speak closer.
I'm also a co-founder of the Students Demand Action for Gun Sense in America chapter at my school. When I decided that I wanted to speak at this public hearing, I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how I wanted to say it. I knew I didn't need to list gun death statistics or suicide statistics or mass shooting statistics, because we all already know them. We know that nearly 40,000 people are killed every year by guns. We know that guns aided 25,000 people in taking their own lives. And we know that in 2018, there was one mass shooting for every single day of the year. We've heard the horror stories, we've marched, we've protested, and we've told our elected officials that this is not okay. That we are not okay knowing that 1 out of 350 people will be killed by a gun, that owning a gun triples the chance of committing suicide, and that 222,000 students have experienced a school shooting since Columbine, which is a number that will only grow in the future. I thought of discussing the horrific killing at Tree of Life, how my family and my friends sheltered in our homes that Saturday morning as we pictured a man with an AR-15 walking the streets that we had grown up on with the blood of his neighbors on his hands. I thought of discussing the events that occurred at my own high school, how a 16-year-old student was murdered one day and a threat of a gun violence attack caused the lowest attendance my school had ever seen the next. But with every story and the aftermath of every shooting comes hope. After Tree of Life, I didn't hear of the fear that ran rampant in my neighborhood, because the month following such tragic events, Friends comforted their friends, neighbors supported their neighbors, and strangers held the hands of others as they marched through the streets of Squirrel Hill, singing only of love. After the death of an Alderdice student, when over 1,000 were too scared to enter their own school, students, teachers, parents, and administrators came together to honor the life of Jonathan Freeman, and once again, there were only songs of love. We as a city are moving in the right direction. I could feel it when I joined hands with my community as we walked our streets, telling all who doubted that gun violence wouldn't be tolerated. I could feel it when I witnessed hundreds from my school stand in solidarity with the family of those we had lost. And I can feel it now as I watch monumental bills on the cusp of becoming law. It is devastating to know that so many of the 40,000 killed in 2018 could have been saved. 40,000 is too many, 11 is too many, and 1 is too many. So we cannot ignore it. I strongly urge the City Council to think of Jonathan Freeman and the 11 moth at Tree of Life to vote to pass this package of bills to protect the constituents and the future generation. Thank you for giving us the time to speak.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you very much. May we have our next registered speaker, please? Thank you, sir. May I have your name, please?
My name is Walter Gibson.
Thank you.
I am a resident of the Township of North Versailles. I obviously do not live in the city, but I do work in the city, and I pay occupational privilege taxes to the city. On October 21st, 1979, my father was murdered. My father was shot in the head while unarmed, standing on a sidewalk. My father was not there for my first day of school. My father was not there to see me graduate. My father wasn't there to see me go to college, to get married, to watch his grandchildren come into this world. And the fault for my father missing all that does not lie with the firearm. It lies with the coward who shot my father from behind. I am a person who exercises my Second Amendment rights. I have guns. The people that know me know that I have a lot of guns. Some of them are AR-15s. I have never caused an injury to another person with any of my firearms, and it's patently unfair for you to try to punish me for the actions of others. Not only are the actions that you're contemplating illegal, but they're immoral. How do you punish someone who's done nothing wrong for something that someone else did? It would be a violation of the Geneva Convention for a foreign army to punish our soldiers that way, to punish all of them for the actions of another. Some of you are behaving in a manner that is worse than the worst despots we face on the planet right now, and I'm disappointed in you. So members of council, both honorable and otherwise, I would like to ask you to think again about this action you're trying to undertake. If you do this, you live up to all of the worst stereotypes that people have about politicians. If you do this, you become the very types of tyrants that were the reason why we got the Second Amendment in the first place. So please, act with honor.
1 minute, Walter.
Thank you. Act with dignity. Act with conviction. And in my last 43 seconds, I'd like to address something. I've heard some disturbing things from the crowd. I heard some lies, and I heard a lot of grave dancing. The lie is that the AR-15 or weapons like it are military weapons. They are not. They are civilian weapons. They are designed for the civilian market. No military on this planet fields that rifle to go into battle. And as far as the grave dancing, I heard several of the previous speakers mention the high crime rate in the African American community. And for those of you who haven't been paying attention, I'm black. I'm a member of that community. I have personally lived through the aftermath of that violence. Don't use our tragedy to push your agenda. Have a nice day.
Walter, thank you. May we have our next registered speaker, please? Ma'am, may I have your name, please?
Yes.
It's very difficult to hear. I don't know how to ask you again. If you could please keep your voices down.
Folks, listen up! Everybody needs to be quiet so the people can speak. Do you hear me? Thank you.
Thank you. May I please have your name? Thank you.
Yes, sir. My name is Rachel Dillon.
Thanks, Rachel.
I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Welcome.
Thank you. City council members and fellow city residents, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Rachel Dillon. I am a daughter, I am a wife, I am a mother. In September of 2017, my parents experienced and survived a violent break-in to their home. My uncle was the good guy with a gun who stopped a bad guy. The bad guy was a 23-year-old kid, high and completely intoxicated on meth and cocaine, with a history of violence, armed with a 2x4, who moments earlier had bludgeoned an elderly lady to death in her driveway. You can imagine the confusion as two residents were calling 911 persistently from the same street. My father, needing to assist my aunt on the phone with 911, left my uncle to cover the front door. After being warned several times not to come in, what would happen if he did? He entered, charged at my uncle with a bloodied 2x4, and was fatally shot in self-defense. Instead of planning 4 funerals, a gun prevented me from planning a single one. Thankfully, this intruder was outmatched by my uncle with a gun. Where does gun control end? Why are people so afraid to put the burden of responsibility on people choosing to commit crime? Why is eliminating protective tools always the go-to answer, instead of demanding and preaching a higher value of life that must be protected at all costs? Why do elected officials rush for the feel-good answer? Do you feel good knowing that you're going to take away my right to protect myself, my family, and my children? Because I don't. This is why I can still carry.
1 minute? No.
Banning additional weapons which are founded on the street in the hands of other criminals allows stay-at-home moms, single women, and minorities to be at a great disadvantage for personal safety, where the criminals have better weapons than the victims. We are then victims for simply following the law. We will never stand up to violence, and we will never hold a higher value of life unless these laws reflect these values and allow the citizens to prepare and defend themselves. This means my personal defense weapon must outmatch the criminal.
Thanks, Rachel. Your time has expired. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
May we have our next registered speaker, please? Okay. Thank you. Welcome. I need your name, please.
Justin Dillon, resident of Erie, PA.
Thanks, Justin.
We have all walks of life here from both sides. It's great to see this. It's a great way to hear what other people are thinking. This is exactly what we want. We want it to be a better than standing in line and having a bigger audience, but unfortunately this will have to do for now. I came 2.5 hours away. Why? Why is this important to me? Because what you guys are doing is a violation of state law. You guys know, and you guys have been quoted saying so. So you guys are going to violate state law to try to challenge it in court while wasting taxpayer dollars. And then if it does, for some miracle reason, get passed, it's also going to affect me. You want law-abiding citizens to obey the law. So if there's 5,800 municipalities in Pennsylvania, how am I supposed to know those many laws if each and every municipality decides to enact their own ordinances or laws? It's absurd. That means there's a different speed limit every 15 feet that you drive. How are you going to not follow that? It's getting a little ridiculous. And I understand you guys want to do something. You have victims of the Tree of Life Synagogue. We also got sponsored at our rally on the 7th by the same people that were victimized. They're sick and tired of politicians using the backdrop of a mass murder to further their political careers. If you're really about the public and you really want to listen, then listen to the people. The mayor's the forefront, and he's not even here. He's in Washington, D.C. That has nothing to do with anything. He should be here and hear his constituents. I'm not one of his, and I'm glad I'm not, because this would not be taking place in Erie, Pennsylvania. I fought the city of Erie 5 years ago over state preemption. The city of Erie did the exact same thing. Over 7 judges agreed with me that state preemption preempts the city townships from enacting any ordinances that violate state law. Thank you. I beg you not to waste the money that city taxpayers are paying you. You need to do it the right way. Let's have an open discussion. If you're really about the people, then let's be about the people. Let's not have closed doors and be closed-minded. I appreciate your guys' time. I'm going to give up the rest of my time for the fellow speakers that are here.
Thanks, Justin. May we have our next speaker, please? May we have our next speaker, please? Thank you. Welcome. I need your name and where you reside, please.
Brooke Nadonley, Mount Washington.
I'm sorry, Brooke O'Donnelly?
Nadonley.
Thank you, Brooke. You have your 3 minutes.
I'm our District 2 Republican Chair.
Welcome. Thank you. That's very nice.
While we remain shocked and saddened by the events of the Tree of Life shooting, we gather now to disagree with our city's response to it. The proposed gun restrictions would likely not have been a concern to the shooter, not a resident of our city, plotting a larger crime of murder. It is unlikely he would have checked with council or the mayor's office on their preferences to how he harmed the innocent. While we thank our officials for wanting to make us safer, since 1974, it has been illegal for local officials to make their own gun laws. We now have city council and the mayor breaking Pennsylvania law. You officials took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States of this state and the charter of this city to the best of your abilities. I ask you if this is the best of your abilities. Worse yet, you sit here, aware you're breaking the law, and thumb your noses at taxpayers who will have to bear the cost of the lawsuits. If we the people do not like a law, we do not just get to go break it. You city officials should not be above the law. You are an example to our youth as well as to criminals. If we all have to obey the law and abide by your rules and restrictions, why in God's name would you all be above the law? You seem proud of being examples of criminals, as unrelenting as the thugs Corey. As unrelenting as the thugs we need guns to protect against. When considering the emergency removal provision, the abuse of power is imminent when allowing officials already breaking the law to decide whom they'd like to remove guns from. There are already laws on the books that allow our police to confront any individual making threats. Why would we give you officials already abusing power, more power, to harass the citizens who employ you? We see you abusing your power already, right here before us now with your illegal gun grab. Citizens without arms are destined to be reliant upon a tyrannical government. Our city officials have failed to protect us on a day-to-day basis with public deficiencies from water to potholes to landslides to soft laws and a heroin epidemic. We implore all council to remove their support from this bill and do your jobs legally. We expect to hear the whistle blown if any council member's support was added for this bill without their permission.
Thank you, Brooke. Your time is
Please
expired.
see me to impeach the
Thank
mayor.
you.
Purple clip.
May we have our next registered speaker, please? Okay. Welcome, sir. May I have your name?
Good evening. My name's Sean Henderson, and I'm from Lower Borough.
Thanks, Sean.
I'm the owner of Self Protection Arms, and I'm one of its trainers. I'm certified through the U.S. Concealed Carry Association to provide handgun, concealed carry self-defense, home defense, and countering the mass shooter threat. I've been a licensed to carry firearms holder for over 25 years. I'm a veteran, having served as an infantry in the Army for 8 years. I live just north of the city. However, I commute into and through the city for work, meeting with friends and relatives, and to spend my money in your restaurants, cultural events, and on an almost daily basis. First, as the owner of my own self-protection training business and as a certified instructor, I'm here to let you know that what you're attempting to achieve cannot be achieved with your approach. All evidence from prior mass shootings contradicts you. There's far too much for me to educate you all in roughly the 400 words that I've been allocated. I will sit down with any of you at any time or location to help you better understand the facts. In the end, we are trying to achieve the same thing, the improved safety of our citizens. Actions such as banning semi-automatic weapons, banning assault-style weapons, limiting magazine capacities, and other things that you are doing will do nothing to solve the problems. It will only take the necessary protection out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. Second, as a citizen of this great nation of ours, I'm here to let you know that we will not allow you to infringe upon our unalienable right to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and for some of us to protect others who are too weak to protect themselves. Regardless of the outcome of your vote tonight, or the outcome of anything that Governor Wolf may attempt to achieve through our state legislature or through other methods, we will not allow you to further infringe upon our inalienable rights. These rights are not given to us by you, our elected officials. As human beings, these rights are bestowed upon us by our Creator. Article 1, Section 21 of the PA State Constitution clearly states,
1 minute, Sean.
The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. Please understand the magnitude of your actions. Rest assured, and regardless of the outcome of your ordinance or any future state federal legislation, as our forefathers before us, we will not permit you to infringe upon our God-given rights.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you very much. May we have our next registered speaker, please? I have to ask you again, please, if you can move back, keep the exit free for people to leave. As people exit the chamber, we then can allow additional people to come in to register comments. So please be respectful of everyone that wishes to be here this evening. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Logan Marchione. I live in the Lawrenceville area of Pittsburgh. I want to start by saying that, like everyone here, I'm absolutely appalled by what happened at the Tree of Life shooting, and my heart goes out to the victims and their families. However, it is my opinion that these proposed ordinances would have done nothing to stop the shooter. They will do nothing to stop a second shooter, and they do not address the core issue of violence in this country.
John.
My issues with the ordinances are as follows.
It's just so difficult to hear.
I won't waste your time discussing the legality, because you and I already know what the mayor and city council is trying to pass is illegal. The problem that bothers me the most is the fact that these ordinances, in my opinion, are nothing more than security theater. They're designed to make certain people look good, make certain people feel good, and do nothing to increase public safety. According to a study by the U.S. Department of Justice published earlier this month, among almost 300,000 criminals that committed a crime with a firearm, only 7% used a firearm that was registered to them, purchased under their real name from a licensed firearm dealer. The other 93% of criminals opted to disregard the firearms laws and break them. Those 300,000 criminals do not care about any laws, including the laws of the city of Pittsburgh, but for some reason, the city thinks passing 3 more laws will stop violence in the city. In reality, the only people these laws will really affect are people like me. Law-abiding citizens, they're going to have to choose between giving up their guns or moving outside the city limits, taking my money, my tax dollars, and my votes with me. My other issue with these proposed ordinances is a question of allocation of resources. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, Pennsylvania is a state that consistently ranks last in the nation in the following vital infrastructure categories: bridges, drinking water, stormwater, wastewater, roads, and transit. Pittsburgh is a city that, according to the American Lung Association, consistently ranks among last in the nation in air quality.
1 minute.
This is the same city that thought it would be a good idea to offer Amazon, one of the largest, most profitable companies in the world, a $2 billion tax break to put an office here. And this is the same county that was home to 737 opioid overdose deaths in 2017 alone. My questions for council are as follows. Are these ordinances legal? Do these ordinances increase public safety? And are these proposed ordinances a proper allocation of taxpayer time and money? Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. May we have our next registered speaker, please?
My name is Renata Entley. I'm a resident of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Hold. Listen, I need police presence in the room, please. We're going to hold the hearing until I have police presence. Okay, thank you. You are harming your cause. We cannot hear your argument. We need your cooperation. Please keep your voices down. If we can't hear the argument we make, your voices are falling on deaf ears. Thank you. Please, may we have your name?
Renata Entley. I have been a resident of Pennsylvania my entire life, and I'm a patriot of this state. I come from patriots of this state.
Thank you.
It was the shot heard round the world. The shot, mind you, not the kick or the punch. It was the shot that rallied the Minutemen at Lexington. On the night of April 18, 1775, hundreds of British troops set off from Boston towards Concord, Massachusetts, in order to seize weapons and ammunition stockpiled there by American colonists. Early the next morning, the British reached Lexington, where approximately 70 Minutemen had gathered on the village green. Someone fired a shot, it's uncertain which side, and a melee ensued. When the brief clash ended, 8 Americans lay dead, and at least the equal amount were injured, while 1 redcoat was wounded. The British continued to nearby Concord, where that same day they encountered an armed resistance from a group of patriots on the town's north side. Gunfire was exchanged, leaving 2 colonists and 3 redcoats dead. Afterwards, the British retreated back to Boston, skirmishing with, colonial mission men along the way, and suffered a number of casualties. The Revolutionary War had begun. The incident at the North Bridge was later memorialized by Ralph Waldo Emerson in his 1837 poem, Concord Hymn. Now I'm going to tell you, I have a sister. My own personal issues, I have a sister with mental problems. This isn't about guns. It is about people that don't follow the laws. We have a woman in Erie. She was attacked and assaulted with a knife and nearly killed. The man that assaulted her had a laundry list of issues that he had already been let out of prison for. The fact of the matter is that he should not have been running free to do harm. Assault is an action, not a weapon. Therefore, since no one knows exactly what an assault weapon is, you can't personally begin to know what to attempt to take from us. I emphasize attempt. Some lists I've seen include handguns, personal handguns. Us, the law-abiding Americans and patriots, need weapons to defend ourselves against those who intend to do us and our families harm. The ones that are allowed to roam free with known criminal and mental issues. My sister should not be running the streets, and in fact, she lives in Pittsburgh, just to give you a little peace of mind. The next time I have to defend myself and my family, I'm not going to do it with a frying pan.
May we have our next registered speaker, please? Hi, welcome. May I have your name, please?
Yes, my name is Diane Matway, and I live in the city.
Thank you, Diane.
I am the mother of 2 high school-aged boys, and I want to break the pattern of gun violence. I want a renewed and sustainable level of safety in all communities for all people. Why? I'll tell you, my children, all of our children, know they are safer indoors with a book, or more likely in front of their phone or a video game. They are being forced to exist in this unabashed gun culture. Every single day they hear of another shooting. They are regularly and consistently under threat and lockdown. Wherever they go, they look for exits and an escape. They know in their bones they are not safe. This is not normal. I think we are living in a really sad and scary time. And in the midst of it, everybody here tonight has one thing in common. It's fear. Fear of losing someone or something that really matters, truly matters to us. That includes the moviegoer, the marginalized Black life, the student, the gun owner. We're all afraid. Me, I'm afraid. I am the mother who yearns to protect her children. We don't have to live this way. For too many years, our state and federal legislators have been paralyzed and either unable or uninterested in protecting us from further gun violence. Why? Well, it's pretty simple when you boil it down.
1 minute, Diane.
There has been a whole lot of self-interest on behalf of the once powerful gun-selling lobby. And many people who really love their guns, and I have a lot of friends and family that have guns, have bought into the lie that if you give in to safety measures, you will eventually lose all your guns. That's nonsense. And I'm here to tell you, we've all had enough. I applaud the city's bold force to take some action and stop this gun-fueled crisis. We have to start someplace. Please, let's all just drop the rhetoric. Let's look at this hearing as an opportunity to work together toward a genuine solution that saves lives. Thank you, Mayor Peduto, for your leadership. Thank you for following your moral compass. Thank you, Councilman Strasburger, Councilman O'Connor, and Representative Frankel for your service and bravery. Let's do this together so we can all feel safe.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank
you for being here. May we have our next speaker, please? Welcome. May I have your name?
Hello. My name is Mark Kirchmore. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm a generational Democrat and a union-building tradesman. First off, I would like to say that I'm against gun violence. We have countless gun laws that currently restrict certain type of firearms and accessories. I'm in favor for responsible gun ownership. What I am against is illegal laws that ban any type of firearm or related accessory. There is no such thing as an assault-style weapon. An assault is an action and can be performed with any object, like this microphone, anything. For almost half of my life, I have owned firearms. For 9 years, I've possessed a license to carry firearms. I have been able to teach people how to safely use firearms, including my wife, family members, and friends who were initially averse to them, many whom now are firearm owners and city residents. My father and I enjoy a local gun range that we go to almost every weekend and has brought us closer together. Is that something you want to take away from my family? Would having these new laws in place stop the mayor from having his security detail with him with firearms? What about when the president comes to town? Famous musicians or other high-profile individuals? Are those lives more valuable than mine? Being that I'm a union-building tradesman, the topic of gun control comes up very often at work. Most of my peers are registered Democrats. Typically, I am a straight Democratic vote, but wonder how this will unfold the upcoming election. A large majority of my peers have the same concern, and many of the people that I work with say that if these new proposals go into effect, they will be switching to the Republican Party. With these proposed illegal gun laws, all citizens will face financial burden from the impending lawsuit. With the ban of magazine capacity and firearm type, I could be turned into a criminal that is forced to surrender my property, which I think is very unfair. If speed limits are 70 miles an hour, why does my car go 140? What is the difference? The funding that would be wasted trying to make a law, according to the district attorney, that is illegal to pass, could be better used on projects like infrastructure, mental health, helping underprivileged children, strengthening first responders' relationship with the community, and fighting the current drug epidemic. The Bill of Rights was ratified on December 15, 1791. At that time, we were still using a printing press that printed one page at a time. I can now go on Twitter and spew whatever I like at 280 characters as fast as I can type. Doesn't have to be true. I could say that I don't like anybody, but that's allowed. How is certain amendments allowed to be changed and other ones not even looked at? I just want to. Sorry. Can I leave you with one
Mark,
quote?
Thank you. Your time is up.
Right,
thank you for being here. Thank you. Welcome. May I have your name and where you reside, please?
Mary Knesny, the south side of Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Mary.
My family and I have been part of the tax base of this fine city for 3 generations, and what you are proposing is a disgrace to all law-abiding gun owners. I'm not going to talk to you about the illegality of what you're trying to do or the fact that the vast majority of crimes that are gun-related are committed by criminals who illegally have guns. This is why gun control, such as you are proposing, such that will restrict legal gun ownership, is not right and won't be effective. Tonight cannot be about facts, otherwise we would not be here. It's obviously about emotions and politics. My father, a city resident, World War II vet, and a city police officer, taught myself and my sister about gun safety at a young age. Through my adulthood, my interest in guns has continued for both recreation and defense. This has included educating my own children about gun safety. My kids have gone to the range with me, shot various rifles, including the dreaded AR-15, as well as handguns. They know guns are not toys. If my 22-year-old was here, a senior at Pitt, he would tell you how less than a year ago, a low-life punk shoved an illegally obtained gun into his face right behind our home. He'd tell you, after living through police response times and court processes, that what has made him feel most protected is learning how to box and taking responsibility for his own safety. And that includes further training with handguns and him obtaining a concealed carry permit. He is of age to vote, pay tax, and is against this ordinance as well. If my 16-year-old daughter were here, a junior at Carrick High School, she'd tell you she's a pretty good shot, but she's not actually, all that thrilled with guns. She does know the value of guns and guns in the hands of good guys. She did a paper. She would tell you that school shootings and the reports coming out from them will tell you how long people have waited for response while others have died. In addition to being a mom,
Thanks, Mary. 1 minute, okay?
Yes, sir. In addition to being a mom, I'm a master's prepared registered nurse. I can tell you I valued life, have been with dying people, grieving families, and have seen the aftermath of death. What I can't tell you is how I'd feel knowing I'm trained, a good guy, but unable to help myself or my family in life-threatening situations because you all want to disarm me. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for my safety, that of my children, neighbors, and anyone else present in a life-threatening situation. None of you will be there when the next time a gun is thrust into my child's face. None of you will be there the next time my daughter is indecently assaulted. All these ordinances will do is force me to become a criminal because in good conscience, I cannot comply.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for being here. Come on, honey. Come on up. Sir, if you'd like, I think you might even be able to remove the microphone for her.
What's that?
I thought maybe you might even be able to remove the microphone for her.
Yeah. You want to hold it, honey?
Okay. Why don't you stand where we can see you, okay?
There you go,
Thank you. Would you tell me your name, please?
Hi, my name's Hannah, and I'm 6.5 years old.
Yeah.
I live in Churchill, and I go to school at Community Day School, and I love that school. It's in Squirrel Hill, where a sick person killed 11 people because they were Jewish, like me. My dad said he was sick and he needed his brain fixed, but I'm scared there's other people who are sick too who could shoot people. I hope you will protect him, me and the other kids at Community Day School by stopping people from getting guns and making us not safe.
Thank you, Hannah.
Okay, 10 seconds. She just wanted to let you know, she's been saying to us about all the people, she won't let me say mom and dad, that ever since the shooting, she said that, I'm Jade Warren, this is my daughter Hannah Warren, ever since the shooting, and since it's the friends of hers whose families were shot, she's now asking if we're going to be shot. So anything you can do to make that stop would be great. Thank you.
Jake, thanks for being here. Thank you, Hannah.
Good job, Kate.
Thank you, Hannah. Welcome, sir. May I have your name, please?
Hi, Mr. Council President. My name is Josh Guckert. I'm an attorney and the Secretary of the Libertarian Party of Allegheny County, and I live here in Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Josh.
I come to speak with you today because I fear that this new gun control will be effective. I do not mean that it will be effective in its stated goals. It will be effective only in punishing and discriminating against those in our society who are already treated as second-class citizens. There remain at least 2 white nationalist groups in the city of Pittsburgh, one known as the Right Stuff and the other called Identity Europa. Last August, a black man by the name of Joden Rocco was attacked on the North Shore by a white supremacist. The month before, a group of skinheads attacked a black man at a bar in Avalon. But in 2015, when Gerard Williams was charged by a man yelling racial slurs at a Waffle House in Fort Myers, Florida, he was able to defend himself with a gun. If bills like those proposed today were to pass, our council will be making it more difficult for victims of hate to defend themselves. Worse yet, this council would add even more arbitrary crimes, which could easily serve as pretext for police to stop young men of color in our city. People of color would not be our only neighbors whom this bill would turn into victims. Young women at our universities like Pitt, Duquesne, Point Park, Carnegie Mellon, Chatham, and Carlow would be deprived of their constitutional rights to prevent possible domestic violence or sexual assault. A little more than a year ago, Alina Shaykat, who was a 20-year-old student at Pitt, was murdered by an ex-boyfriend due to blunt force trauma to her head. Just last November, Miranda Grimm-Galarski, a 19-year-old from Homestead, was killed by an ex after she was shot 17 times. On the other hand, in 2017, an Illinois woman did not even have to discharge her weapon when a man with a knife jumped into her car. She merely showed her concealed firearm, prompting him to flee. In the era of Me Too, Pittsburgh should be a safe place for women, not a city that leaves them defenseless against predators. Our neighbors in the LGBT community are also often targets of heinous crimes. Just last year, 22 transgender people were murdered. In June, we'll celebrate Pittsburgh Pride, just as we do every year, right down the street from this building. The Pink Pistols, a group for LGBT Americans who support gun rights, has an active chapter here in Pittsburgh. People of different sexual orientations and gender identities should be permitted to have peace of mind in defending themselves against those who wish to do them harm. Perhaps worst about these bills is that they destroy due process, the right to a presumption of innocence, by allowing courts to suspend Pittsburghers' gun rights through only a determination that they are a so-called threat. This provision is ripe for abuse against the groups I've mentioned and any group that might be disfavored in the future. At the national level, we've seen a president far too quick to demonize and fearmonger people who are different in order to enact unjust and immoral laws. Our city is better than that. We cannot allow past acts of terror to prompt future injustices. By rejecting this proposed legislation, we can truly prove that love and power trumps hate and fear and keep our city one that allows more than just favored classes the right to practice self-defense.
Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Thank you. Today we have our next registered speaker. Sir, may I please have your last name first?
Smith.
Thank you.
My first name is Brandon.
Brandon Smith, thank you. You have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Council President Kraus. And thank you, Councilwoman Harris, for sharing the details of this event on social media. I think it's really important that citizens be aware of the process and be able to participate in this process. My name is Brandon Smith. I speak to you this evening as a concerned citizen and as a Pennsylvania attorney. I voiced my support for these proposals pertaining to firearm legislation, and I would like to briefly discuss their legal foundation for you. Ironically, the late Justice Antonin Scalia, in his opinion in the landmark Second Amendment case, D.C. versus Heller, sheds light on the limits of the Second Amendment, conceding that the right to bear arms, quote, is not a right to keep and carry a weapon in whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatever purpose. A conservative majority in 2003 could have cemented a hardline view of the Second Amendment then and there, but they purposefully did not. While DC's longstanding ban ultimately was struck down in 2003, Justice Scalia's majority opinion included restrictive language that does not preclude state and local regulations entirely. The Heller case held that there is a historic tradition of prohibiting the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons. I do not need to remind anybody here that Heller was written a decade before mass shooting incidents happened on an almost weekly basis. And of course, after last October, when it happened in our own backyard. On the second issue of preemption, it is true that localities are typically preempted from enacting regulations stricter than those at the state level. This is based primarily on the principles of federalism. However, under current Pennsylvania law, localities are permitted to regulate the discharge of firearms within city limits. This is key. This provides a sound legal foundation on which to support regulations at the local level. As a result, not only do I voice my support for these proposals currently on the table, but I encourage you to pass textually specific regulations that could pass this legal standard. For example, a trigger lock law, which would require firearms to be incapacitated until they're needed for self-defense. This was suggested by Professor John Vernick, a member of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. This type of regulation would be legal under current Pennsylvania law, and it would survive certain challenges from the NRA and other special interest groups that are here this evening. In sum, I'd like to thank you for taking the brave step of doing what those at the state level and the federal level are not doing. Thank you for taking the time to consider my comments.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you for being here. Sir, may I please have your last name first?
Yeah, Porman.
I'm sorry.
Poorman, P-O-O-R-M-A-N. Matt, from City of Pittsburgh.
I'm sorry, Mr. Poorman, I don't have you as a registered speaker. Where am I? Thank you. Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and hearing everybody on these proposals. I would like to read the relevant preemption statute because it seems like everybody on the council up here does not fully understand it for some reason. Section 6120A, it reads, no county, municipality, or township may in any manner regulate the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms, ammunition, or ammunition components when carried or transported for purposes not prohibited by the laws of this Commonwealth. Now, we've heard tonight a lot of emotional pleas, and you'll hear more, and they're all very moving. None of that is relevant because you do not have the authority to do any of what you're trying to do. Imagine, if you will, if you set this precedent that you pass these laws and then are somehow not charged with the crimes outlined in our state statutes. What kind of a precedent is that, that you can just do whatever you want and leave the rest of us to fend for ourselves? I would like you to consider all of the tax money that will be wasted for the city and what it could all go towards instead of all of the impending lawsuits that you will undoubtedly have. Now, I personally didn't bring up any of my own personal feelings on firearms because, frankly, my argument doesn't really need it. I will say, however, that you should vote. Should you vote these laws in, you can expect nearly zero compliance. Everybody's been very nice in saying that they will move or turn their things in, but as evidenced by neighboring states, zero compliance. New Jersey has passed magazine capacity laws. Nobody has turned any in. Nobody has registered any of them. So with that in mind, I will end with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. It's relevant. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Matt. May we have our next registered speaker? Welcome. Sir, may I have your last name first?
Perea, P-E-R-E-A.
Thank you.
First name, Joseph.
Yes, thank you.
I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
With these proposals, the city of Pittsburgh will effectively be a gun-free zone for the common citizen. These types of regulations are, simply put, ineffective. Despite studies showing that areas with higher gun ownership have less violent crime and that the vast majority of public mass shootings occur in gun-free zones, these legislators believe the proposed laws are the best way to make our city safer. Gun-free zones ensure that potential victims will be at their most vulnerable. In a gun-free zone, good, law-abiding citizens will be unarmed. However, criminals will still be armed because criminals disobey the law. The reality of the gun-free zone means that predators will face less resistance when attacking their prey. The language of the proposed laws is dishonest to a high degree. They will tell you this is to get rid of the assault weapons, but to them, assault weapons means most firearms. Not only will they ban the ARs and the AKs, but also the 9mm Glock 43 compact handgun, the type of gun that can fit in your pocket simply because it has the capability of accepting magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. While Chapter 607 says your AR will be grandfathered in, Chapter 610 outlaws attachments that nearly every AR has, effectively making your grandfathered AR an illegal weapon. In the moments of a predatory attack, the only people that will be able to defend us are the police that are minutes away. These police will be among the only people trusted enough to carry firearms, even though they commit crimes at higher rates than the average concealed weapons permit wielding citizen. The proposed Chapter 603 Extreme Risk Protection Order is a violation of the highest extent and infringes not only on our right to bear arms, but our protection from search and seizure, our right to due process, and our right to face our accuser. With a written affidavit, there is no presumption of innocence. You are guilty, and the burden is on you to prove your innocence. These legislators want to push through these laws despite state law saying that they cannot. They expect us to comply with unconstitutional laws, yet by enacting these laws, they also believe that they themselves are above the law. In regards to possible firearm legislation, our mayor can be quoted as saying, if in 2 years the homicide rate goes up, I'll go to prison. Why say this to all the legislators? If you make these proposals into law, we the people will not wait 2 years to see what happens. We the people will take legal action, and we the people will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. May we have our next speaker, please? Hi, welcome. May I have your last name first, please?
Ames, E-A-M-E-S.
E-A-M-E-S. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Katrina, welcome.
Thank you. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh, and I'm good to start? Yep.
Yes, please.
I have lived my life in the expectation of violence, and I have spent my entire adult life trying to respond to violence in ways that are thoughtful and productive. On June 12, 2016, there was a shooting at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. I was in the process of coming out as bi during that time. I went to Pride that weekend for the first time and then publicly came out to everyone on June 22nd because I decided that living my life in fear of the next bad thing that could happen was not worth it, and that other people's hate could not silence me. On October 1st, 2017, there was a shooting at a concert in Las Vegas, and my friend got a call from his mother, letting him know that his brother was at the concert, but thank God he was okay. On October 7th, I organized a party at a local arcade where I helped people write to their legislators and sent out their letters for them. I collected over a dozen letters and sent them out to state and federal legislators. Some of them had been the first time they had ever contacted someone representing them. On February 14th, there was a shooting at a school in Parkland, Florida. On March 24th, 2018, approximately 30,000 people marched in Pittsburgh for the March for Our Lives. I was at the march registering people to vote. I talked to teenagers about to turn 18, people who had just gotten their citizenship, and some that had just moved and needed to update their registration status. On October 27th, 2018, I arrived at work to find my boss, who was also my friend, crying and frantically making phone calls because her family attends the Tree of Life Synagogue and the news had just broke that there was an active shooter. It was difficult to get in contact with anyone, and we eventually found out that her great-aunt died at the age of 97 in an anti-Semitic attack. Our company donated a portion of our proceeds to the nonprofit Everytown for gun safety that weekend because we, as a group, needed to act in the face of violence. In November, my 9-year-old brother asked if 9/11 was going to happen again. I told him no, because we work to prevent problems in our order to protect people in our communities and keep us safe. We solve problems, and he told me that I'm wrong, because the shootings keep happening and they keep getting closer to us. And he told me that he knows what to do if a shooter enters his elementary school. I don't want my brother to live in a world where he expects violence. I grew up in that world and I believe he deserves better. I believe all of our children deserve better. An assault weapons ban maybe wouldn't have made it more difficult for the shooter at the Tree of Life Synagogue to hurt my community. But I know regulations on bump stocks would have prevented trauma and death brought upon my community in Las Vegas, and I know that an extreme risk protection order would have helped my family after an abusive man threatened to murder us all after we had filed a PFA. These laws won't just make us feel safer, but can actively work to help make us safe. It can help prevent these suicides. It can help prevent the domestic abuse and the violence that comes after getting out and leaving that situation.
Thanks, Katrina, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Welcome, sir. Thank you. Sir, may I have your last name first?
Roberts.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Council members, I'm here to give my story. When I was 12 years old, a gentleman broke into my home. He broke in to rob us of money. In his fumbling through our house, he woke my father. Now keep in mind, this gentleman did have arms. My father come down the steps with his gun and stopped him. He stopped him from hurting me, my sister, and my mother. We might have been dead. I beg you guys to reconsider how you put this through, okay? I am afraid if you guys put this through, you are setting up my great city of Pittsburgh, which stand behind me, of being assaulted, robbed, murder, and they do not need that. I will close this by saying, please, please learn about these firearms that you guys are consider banning. Not all of them are assault weapons. Assault weapons are military. What we own is not. They are single shots, single projectile. They don't come out as fast as everybody thinks. I own them. Please think about this. Learn about the weapons and understand how they work before you make an informed decision on all of our safeties, whether you're against this or for this. Thank you for your time, and you have a great night.
Michael, where did you say you lived? I'm sorry.
Brookline.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, welcome. May I have your last name, please?
Bigley. The first name is Brian.
Figley?
Summer Hill, Pittsburgh.
I'm sorry, Figley?
Bigley, B-I-G-L-E-Y.
Thank you very much, Brian. You have your 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, United States Navy veteran. I'm speaking!
Please be respectful of everyone that has come here to log their comments. Sir, please proceed.
Thank you. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and this state and the charter of this city, and I will discharge these duties of office to the best of my ability. Every one of you took that oath. Every one of you. If you don't stand up for your oath, you're a liar. You're lying to the people here. These gentlemen here took an oath. They'd jump in front of you before they'd allow somebody to shoot you. And so would I. I've done it. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm still a Marine. I'm not going to bore you with Article 2, Section 21. The violations are glaring. I will say this, if you force me to leave my city, you will pay for my move. Every bit of it. You'll buy my house, you'll buy my car, and you'll pay for the expenses it costs for me to move. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If the opposition disarms, well and good. If it refuses, we shall disarm them ourselves. Joseph Stalin. To conquer a nation, first disarm its citizens. Adolf Hitler. I give back my time.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for being here. Sir. Welcome. May I have your last name first, please?
Gibbons, G-I-B-B-O-N-S.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeffrey. Thank you.
So, since we often talk about common sense gun laws, I'd like to read a passage from Common Sense by Thomas Paine, one of the documents that helped found this nation. It reads, "For were the impulses of conscience clear, uniform, and irresistibly obeyed, man would need no other lawgiver. But that not being the case, he finds it necessary to surrender up a part of his property to furnish means for the protection of the rest. And this he is induced to do by the same prudence which, in every other case, advises him out of two evils to choose the least. Wherefore, security being the true design and end of government, it unanswerably follows that whatever form thereof appears most likely to ensure it with the least expense and greatest benefit is preferable to all others." Again, security is the true design and end of government, yet our current gun laws are insufficient to ensure our safety. Therefore, I'd like to briefly address some of the arguments opposing these ordinances. If nothing else, maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. First, the idea that gun laws lead to tyranny. While it is true that repressive regimes like North Korea and Venezuela have strict gun laws, democratic nations like Britain, Australia, and South Korea also have strict gun laws and remain free societies. Second, the idea that gun laws are ineffective. It's worth noting that the Las Vegas and Orlando nightclub shootings were committed using a semi-automatic rifle. If these shooters had access to fully automatic weapons, the death toll would have been far higher, but our current gun laws prevented them from obtaining deadlier weapons. Third, that if there were just one armed citizen or one armed guard in that synagogue, there might have been a very different outcome. That doesn't mean that outcome would be without bloodshed. During the Sutherland Springs church shooting, Stephen Williford bravely confronted the shooter, but he was unable to stop the murder of 26 people. In April 2018, James Shaw Jr. wrestled a gun away from a shooter at a Waffle House in Antioch, Tennessee, but 4 people still died. And in November 2018, security guard Jamel Robertson, who was armed, stopped a shooter at a Chicago bar only to get mistakenly shot by police. These men are heroes, and I don't say this to diminish their bravery, but it is always better to stop a shooting before it begins. A government that cannot protect its own citizens might as well not exist at all. Mr. Zappala is correct that City Council cannot pass these ordinances under state law, but the Pennsylvania General Assembly is wrong to impose such a law on Pittsburgh. Our republic was founded on the idea of the consent of the governed, but when I, a member of the governed, consent to these gun ordinances, suddenly my voice no longer matters, and I am dismissed as either a brainless liberal or falsely accused to be a paid protester that's part of some astroturf organization funded by George Soros.
Time's up, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
May I have our next speaker, please? Next speaker, please. Next speaker. Sir, can I start with your last name, please?
It's Riddile.
I can't hear you.
It's Riddile, R-I-D-D-I-L-E.
R-I-D-D-I-L-E?
Correct.
Yes, thank you, Kenneth. You have your 3 minutes.
Yep. So I was taught growing up that my actions have consequences. But 100% of the people that would have their lives affected by these proposals are honest, currently law-abiding people and have committed no action to warrant these consequences. Okay. The people that do commit such actions, the violent criminals, the only effect these proposals may have on their lives is that their job might get easier. They will be safer, not anybody in this room. Okay. They've already made their peace with the toughest punishments our justice system has to offer. These additional ordinances mean nothing to them. They only mean something to people like myself who do our best to follow the law. So make no mistake, if you pass these measures, you're siding with murderers, rapists, and the rest of the violent criminal minority over the safety and civil rights of the law-abiding majority. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Ken. Next speaker, please. Thank you. Sir, can I begin with your last name?
Yes, Karpax, K-A-R-P-A-C-S.
I already had George, and I have a Jennifer.
She's behind me, and I haven't spoken yet.
I don't have you here, sir, but I do have your book. Yes? You don't have him checked off? Okay, George, please go ahead.
Okay,
maybe
George
we can
Karpax?
take Jennifer next?
Yes,
Thank you.
Of South Park Township.
Thank you.
I was largely on the side of the Second Amendment until Valentine's Day last year with the shooting in Florida at the Stoneman Douglas School. And at that moment, I just had enough, and I just concluded that if we don't do this now, when will we do it? And I want to commend the 7 of the 9 council people and Mayor Peduto for backing it and trying to create a coalition of mayors to finally put an end to this. I'm not a gun owner. I don't see a need to have one. And so the day has arrived where we can address this. And since the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, it hit home for me because I had worked at the Rehab Institute as my first job in the city, which is like diagonally from this synagogue, the Rehab Institute. So, and then I found out later that a friend of mine knew the 2 brothers. He had actually walked them and taken them to the synagogue. So I want to thank you for getting this. And let's not forget, Pittsburgh got a home rule charter. And if we can't get this through at a council, maybe we could add something on as a referendum on the ballot in May. Maybe there's a way that citizens that live here, I think, should have the strongest voice for change. And turned out that I also spoke to Jack Wagner, who was on this council when this ordinance was put on the books in 92, 93. And I talked to Jack on Veterans Day at the Brentwood Church. And he told me about what he had done, and he said, well, maybe this could have been prevented, what had happened just a few weeks prior. So, but the problem is that the state preemption, and that's where I say, anybody here that wants to further this and strengthen the city's resolve in getting this done, get the state, get Frankel, get Dan Miller, Wheatley, and all these guys
1 minute, George.
on here at the state level, so that the city can put something and actually enforce it, and not just have it just be another 92, 93 effort. And I think right now we have someone in Lieutenant Governor Fetterman as the tiebreaker vote in the Senate, and we have Governor Wolf, who I believe also would author and would sign if this got on his desk. So thank you for your time. Thanks, and continue up.
Thank you, George. Jennifer, may we take you next, please? Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Carpax. And I would like to explain why I think that the Second Amendment needs to be defended. So I will give an example of a movie that I love to watch called Love's Long Journey by Hallmark. And in that movie, in part of the movie, it's about a pioneer family that has a homestead on the prairie. And during the scene, there's an attempted robbery at this homestead. And Willie, the man who owns the ranch there, had done something related to the Second Amendment. And what happens when the robbers attempt to rob this family is Willie, Missy, the wife, finds a gun hidden in the ground where Willie put the family money. And without the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, Willie wouldn't have been able to hide a gun on his property, so when the robbers, the bad guys, came to rob him, his wife was able to get the gun and defend herself against the robbers. And the Second Amendment gives us the right to bear arms, which our founding fathers put into place so that people could defend themselves and their property against bad guys. And if the bad guys have the guns and the good guys don't have the guns, then the bad guys will be able to take advantage of the good guys. And the Second Amendment right was given so that the good guys could have guns to defend their families and their property. And that's why I'm in support of the Second Amendment.
Thanks, Jennifer. May we have our next speaker, please? Thank you. Can I begin with your last name, please?
My last name's Larger, first name's Tracy.
Is it Larger?
Larger. I live in the city of Pittsburgh, Brookline.
Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. So a lot of what I'm going to say has already been reiterated, but I think it needs to be restated. We need to enforce the current laws. You don't need new gun laws. If you would enforce the current laws on the books, it would make a big difference. I was told by a police officer from the city of Pittsburgh that I'm good friends with that one of the first things they do is they plea out the weapons charge. Why? Enforce the law. What you're doing is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional with the law of Pennsylvania. Only the state legislature can change these laws. Criminals will always get a gun. They don't abide by laws. You are only affecting me, a law-abiding citizen. I'd also like to state that I am an NRA pistol instructor. I'm also a range safety officer. One of the first things we teach is safety. That always comes first. Okay? Everybody's been talking about the mass shootings with the colleges and the different areas. The one shooting that nobody has brought up is that years ago there was a shooting at Edinburgh College. You know how the shooter was stopped? By a professor that had a gun, a shotgun, in his car. He went and got it. He waited until the guy went to reload, and when he went to reload, he was able to stop him. How many lives were saved because that person had a gun? And that's what I think you're all forgetting. You need to remember that. You're going to make it easier for the criminal and make it harder for a law-abiding citizen. And with these laws, you're going to end up making me a criminal, a law-abiding citizen, a law-abiding gun owner. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tracy. May we have our next speaker, please? Sir, can I begin with your last name?
Embry, Echo, Mike, Bravo, Romeo, Echo, Echo.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you just give me your name?
Embry.
Thank you. Jason?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. And you reside where, please?
Gibsonia, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Jason. Please, you have your time, Jason.
I have 2 questions for you. First, do you believe that evil exists in the world? My second question for you is, do you believe you have the personal right to protect yourself against that evil? The Tree of Life events were a tragedy, and I truly feel sorry and sorrow for those murdered, and I feel immense grief for their families. So I ask you to put yourself in that synagogue, or at Sandy Hook Elementary, or in the Aurora, Colorado movie theater. In those situations, would you rather have a gun or not have a gun? I am by no means saying that given those situations, I could have prevented any or all of those senseless deaths. What I am saying is that I would have defended myself and those around me to the best of my ability. The gun gives me better odds in that fight, with the potential to survive and to enable others to survive. I understand the motivation behind these ordinances is driven by a need to do something, anything, prompted by the horrific acts at the Tree of Life Synagogue and under the banner of public safety. But you cannot legislate out evil in people's hearts. None of these ordinances would have prevented the events at Tree of Life. What would have prevented these and future events? Take a look at the quality of education system that you have. Take a look at the consistency of the court systems. Take a look at how restrictive and rigidly controlled and unpleasant your prison systems are. Where you have higher education standards, firearm violence is down. When you find consistent courts, firearm violence is down. Where you find the most strict prisons, firearm violence is down. I will yield the rest of my time, but I just want to leave you with one last thought. These laws will do exactly 0 except disarm the people that are not the problem.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Yep, please. Sir, can I have your last name to begin with?
Meyer, M-E-Y-R.
M-U-Y-E-R?
Yes. George.
M-U-Y-E-R?
M-E-Y-E-R.
I have you, George. Thank you. And you live where, George?
Resident of the city of Pittsburgh, Manchester neighborhood.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello, my name is George Meyer. I'm an entrepreneur and also in both the automotive service industry and the music publishing industry. I would like to thank our Honorable Mayor Peduto, his assistant Ms. Clark, and our gracious City Council for granting the floor of these chambers so that I might be able to speak regarding our Second Amendment. Let's take a moment to join hands, bow our heads, and remember those whom have become victims of gun violence. I myself have lost loved family members. My 2 cousins, Michael Wiseman and Jimmy Tass, both of whom died within walking distance of these chambers. I love them both and will always remember their smiles. How do we stop this tragedy from ever occurring again? We must first examine ourselves. We must first judge our own character and our own aspirations. Why do you want to possess something that only ends the life of human beings or another species? Both Jimmy and Michael possessed weapons because they were both potent potable dealers in the narcotics black market. Jimmy was murdered in cold blood, even though he gave the robber everything he wanted without a fight. The murderer said, and I quote verbatim, "I ain't playing with you. as he walked out with a stolen booty, shooting him during egress. Michael was killed defending his sister while under the eye of a gun, whom was nearby to witness the death by premeditated stabbing over an adulterous love triangle unbeknownst to his sister. So what is the reason or reasons we possess a weapon? To defend ourselves or to ruin ourselves? In all reality, a life decision that is never reported on the news. A 1-second decision that ruins everybody's lives, victims and survivors alike. Therefore, the only thing anyone ever does in the moment of now is to become deceased. Most of us come into this world alone, and all of us usually leave this world alone. Some possess a weapon to defend ourselves because there is so much violence around us. Some possess a weapon because they are doing actions that are dangerous or illegal. Some possess a weapon because they are not the only suitor in a romance. All three of these reasons are wrong. If you're in a war zone, flee to a safe place. Worldly possessions are nothing when you are able to possess your own life. If you are in the illegal black market, most of your clientele will bring trouble to your door. Perhaps you should remember people, places, and things that Dr. Bob spoke about. If you own a weapon because you have a problem with other suitors propositioning the apple of your eye, support sex education in schools. Nevertheless, you have dismissed the three previous reasons as to why you should not have a weapon and have obtained one anyway, a must-have. Now you must find a reasonable excuse to use that weapon.
Thanks, George. Your time's expired. Thanks for being here. May we have our next
My speech
registered...
is available from the Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, welcome. May I just begin with your last name, please?
Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R.
Thank
Susie
you.
Meyer.
Yep, thank you, Susan.
City of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
I am a Pittsburgh native and a city resident. I've lived here for 23 years in the city. I am author of a book called At Home in the Real World. In my 8,000 hours of research, learning, training, and practice, I was stunned by what I discovered about American law. I would venture that many people in this hall and many Americans all over operate under some very dangerous assumptions regarding personal safety and the role of the police. I'd like to correct, or at least address, 3 of these assumptions. For the sake of brevity, I'll cite one U.S. Supreme Court case that supports each one. Number 1, municipal police have no constitutional mandate to protect citizens, DeShaney versus Winnebago. Number 2, municipal police have no duty to prevent bad things from happening to you. Domestic abuse, enforcement of restraining orders, threats, or stalking, for instance. That's town of Castle Rock versus Gonzales. Third, police cannot be sued for failure to protect, DeShaney versus Winnebago. In short, it is not the job of the police to protect citizens. Their critical roles lie in public safety. Where does this leave us? It leaves us squaring off with the fact that you and every man and woman and child is responsible for their own personal safety, their lives. This is how the founding fathers meant for it to be. You are responsible for you, not an outside entity. This has bearing on the city council's unlawful ordinances that want to dictate who, where, and how citizens cannot defend themselves. This vast overreach is made worse by the mayor's open encouragement of towards other municipalities and cities to institute top-down authority and strip Americans of critical rights to life and liberty.
1 minute, Suzanne.
Each of us are sovereign individuals, granted the gift of life and the God-given responsibility to defend it. I encourage all city councilmen, especially Councilwoman Darlene Harris in my district, to vote against each of these illegal ordinances. I appreciate this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Hi. Ma'am, can I ask you pull the microphone down to you? Thank you. And may I begin with your last name?
Fulton. Deborah.
Good.
Stanton Heights, Pittsburgh. My family.
Thank you.
My family dates back to the Revolutionary War, when we have fought in every war since then. I've called Pittsburgh home for 65 years. I'm a simple person. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I have neighbors that are my friends. I know my neighbors. My neighbors let me watch their kids. They're not afraid that I have a gun. For over 65 years, I have been handling firearms. And in that time, I have never once broken a law. I grasp the reason behind your proposed legislation. However, it's not going to work. Pittsburgh will become a den of thieves, and you will lose your tax base because all of us will leave because we can't come here with our firearms. We are not going to come here for recreation. We're not going to come here for spend time in your restaurants. We're not going to spend money here. We're going to go out to Monroeville or somewhere else. We're also, if we lose this, we will leave the city. I have already looked into moving because I cannot carry my firearm. And I'm sure that many other ones here are in the same boat.
Thanks, Deborah. Thank you. May we have our next speaker, please? May we have our next speaker, please? May we have our next speaker, please? Can I begin with your last name, please?
Fulton.
I need you to use the microphone, please.
Fulton.
Fulton, thank you. You're Rebecca?
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Rebecca.
I'm a registered voter and resident taxpayer of the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
I'm a Gulf War OEF veteran. Based upon my experiences, it is vital I come before you today to oppose Bills 1218, 1219, and 1220, as well as the fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer money by members of this council who have publicly announced their intent to pass this legislation regardless of any and all testimony presented. I spent 16 years in service of my country fighting for the rights of 40 million American citizens. I dedicated my life to keeping the battles overseas and off U.S. soil. Some of my brothers and sisters gave their lives so that all of you could sit here today making a mockery of this issue. I cannot and will not remain silent. You are not just taking the guns out of the hands of lawful citizens, but giving away the civil rights of 300,000 Pittsburghers. You may be willing to pay the price of mass disarmament with our freedoms, but I am not. This legislation will not solve our society's problems because guns are a means, not the cause. Gun control will not stop criminals, mentally ill, extremists, terrorists, or hostile entities or nations as they do not adhere to the law, abide by the rules of engagement, or the use of force. You are building walls. Communities are dividing, friendships are dissolving, people are looking to relocate, and you are creating increased distrust and disdain for law enforcement as I speak. If you want to change the city for the better, then you need to invest in the people of this and surrounding communities. You have not addressed the criminal minds, the roots of hatred, or the mental illness that begets violence.
1 minute, Rebecca.
Those with evil intent will carry out their nefarious plans with any and all means necessary, guns or not. I have been to the war-ravaged countries. I have seen what lawlessness does to societies and what corruption and suppression in government does to the people. Where they do not have guns to fight or to keep the balance of power in check. Where they line people up and murder them by the hundreds because they no longer have the resources to resist. Where people would rather take your head to further their propaganda than your offer of peace. I have been to the ugly places around this globe,
The reality is we are a superpower because we are heavily armed
Thank you,
as a
Rebecca.
nation.
Your time's expired. Thanks for being here. May I have our next registered speaker, please? You cannot have to stand back. Stand back. You may present to the clerk. Thank you. Hi, welcome. May I have your last name, please?
Burke, B-U-R-K-E.
Okay, thank you. Hold on,
Catherine.
Ms. Burke. Thank you, Catherine.
I reside in Park Place, City of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
I am speaking as a member of Amnesty International USA, Local Group 39. The work of Amnesty International and all human rights groups have their foundation in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the UDHR, was adopted by the United Nations as a yet non-binding document on December 10, 1948, 70 years ago. It enumerates the inalienable rights of all people of the world. It provides a blueprint for a more just and tolerant future. The third article of the UDHR states, everyone has the right to liberty, life, liberty, and security of person. However, according to the New York Times, nearly 40,000 people died from guns in the United States last year. I would argue that this is a flagrant defilement of the human right to life, liberty, and security of person. Among these victims are our own Pittsburgh neighbors who were killed with a semi-automatic weapon at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Squirrel Hill. Our city still grieves this tragedy. We must turn ourselves around. We must turn our attention to the future. We must aspire to ever-decreasing violence in the world. In the language of the UDHR, all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, which will in turn create a kinder, safer world. Therefore, I ask Pittsburgh City Council to vote for the human right of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Hey. Hi. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Can I have your last name, please?
Johnston.
Okay.
First name Megan.
Okay, just bear with me 1 second. Welcome, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you. I am a City of Pittsburgh resident. And I want to thank you all for taking lots of time out of your schedule to hear from the constituents of the City of Pittsburgh, as well as many of our suburban neighbors. We've heard a lot tonight about frying pans and gun bans and, stripping away our Second Amendment rights. And I am a Second Amendment supporter. My family owns weapons. My husband's family owns weapons. I was on the rifle team through high school and in college, and anybody here, and I believe there are many, who own weapons know the firepower, the force, and the skill that it takes to shoot a weapon accurately and safely. Thank you. Assault weapons need no skill. They need no training. And civilians are easily overpowered. Those who are law-abiding citizens who carry weapons to support them and protect themselves are easily overpowered by somebody with an assault weapon. Our police force is easily overpowered by those with an assault weapon, as these are weapons of war. I think it is irresponsible to put our police force in danger on a daily basis by letting other people have these assault weapons, because that's what this is about, is the Second Amendment. This does not strip away our right to protect ourselves for personal protection or for sport. I can still own my weapons legally and be a responsible, law-abiding gun owner. We are not being disarmed. Our rights are not being infringed upon. And I don't believe many people are using AR-15s to protect their home. I think rifles and handguns are most often the weapons of choice. I think passing these are one of the most constitutional and American things that you can do by putting well-regulated back into the Second Amendment. Even if it is not constitutional by the Commonwealth, then it needs to start here. Let it start in Pittsburgh, and let's push it to the state and push it across the country. As a gun owner, a Second Amendment supporter, and a City of Pittsburgh, I am in full support of this, and many are my neighbors. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Megan. May I have our next speaker, please? Hi, welcome. May I have your last name?
Yeah, Gray, the second.
I'm sorry.
Gray, G-R-A-Y.
G-R-A-Y. Thank you, Donald. Welcome.
Hi. I just want to make one comment before I start. For somebody that doesn't want me or my son to be able to defend themselves with an AR-15, you seem to like to be surrounded by people with AR-15s.
Right.
seems a little hypocritical. My wife and I have raised our children to understand the rights guaranteed to them by both the U.S. and PA state constitutions, the Second Amendment, Article 1, Section 21, respectively. We've taught them that the founders saw fit to specifically enumerate these rights because they had faced a tyrannical government, that the right of the governed to secure a free state was so precious that it must be protected from infringement or questioning. According to George Washington, who knew a thing or two about freedom and tyranny, a free people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. But to children living 200+ years after these events transpired, these can seem like vague concepts, fairy tales of a boogeyman that no longer exists or is relevant. However, today, thanks to Governor Wolf, thanks to Mayor Peduto, and thanks to Member of Council, you have allowed them the opportunity to see the faces of men and women who would propose to engage in seditious and illegal acts. Acts that would make their father a criminal every day that he drives to work. You have brought to life in a way that no history book could the need for my children to remain ever vigilant against those that would enthusiastically trade their freedom for safety. Congratulations, they'll be voting for decades. Merriam-Webster defines a tyrant as an absolute ruler unrestrained by law or constitution. Indeed, both Article 1, Section 21 of the PA Constitution and PA Title 18, Section 6120 directly restrain you from passing these ordinances. But in true tyrannical fashion, you expect the citizens of Pennsylvania to abide by an unconstitutional and illegal law. Council members, if you pass these ordinances, I want my children to know one thing about their father, that I will follow your example. I will not comply.
Thank you. Hi, welcome. Can I have your last name, please?
Harris.
Harris?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are you Jamie?
Yes.
Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. I am here as a student and a resident of Pittsburgh. I am here in support of this legislation in question. While there has been some controversy on the legality of this legislation, I would like to note that Pennsylvania has adopted a home rule charter which shifts much of the responsibility from the state to the local community. The reason that our state has adopted this as a form of legislature is to allow a county to amend its governmental organization and powers to suit its needs. Less than 3 months ago, there was a mass shooting within our city limits. I would argue that this constitutes for an updated version of the kind of weapons we allow within our city limits. Because it wasn't just the 11 who died who suffered the consequences. It was their family, friends, but it was also the kids. It was the little boy too scared to go to his Jewish day school, the 10-year-olds in my dad's classroom asking what they did to deserve this, the kids expected to spend less time grieving and more time studying, the kids who internalized that hate, believing they too deserved to die. It was the 1,000 kids too paralyzed with fear to go to my school after a loose shooting threat was made. You see, this was more than just the tragic loss of 11 people from our community. It was a trauma now seared in an entire community's mind. It is my responsibility to show up today and share my support for this legislation being passed. Legislation that will not only help prevent another mass shooting, but stop smaller, equally preventable, heartbreaking events.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Hi, welcome. And can I have your last name, please?
Cowan.
Cullen?
Cowan.
Allison?
No.
What's your first name?
Ori.
I have you. Welcome, Ori. Thank you.
Thank you. Every year, 36,000 Americans are killed by guns. 36,000 people. Think about that. That is enough people to fill PNC Park. In the Las Vegas shooting, 58 people were killed, each one with a different story. Charleston Hartfeld was a 34-year-old veteran and police officer. He was off duty, but he rushed to help people as soon as he heard the gunshots. At Tree of Life, 3 different congregations were hurt. 6 of our police officers were injured, and 11 of my neighbors were killed, including 2 brothers, David and Cecil Rosenthal. They were the kindest souls who would greet everyone at the door. 36,000, each an individual life. They each cared about something different. They each hoped for something different. They each had a different struggle. Instead of aspiring to their hopes and dreams, their lives were taken by senseless acts of gun violence. Without these proposed bills, how am I to know that I will be safe in my school or my synagogue? How will I know that my friends will be safe walking home at night, going to their places of worship, even at their own home? Even though there will be a risk of lawsuit because of the state law, why would you not take the risk if there is a chance that you can make Pittsburgh a little bit safer? Statistics show that gun violence increases in direct proportion to gun ownership. The proposed bill would be a huge step forward. By allowing courts to remove weapons from those who pose an extreme risk to themselves or others, we could solve a huge part of our gun problem. I am tired of hearing every day that there has been a new shooting. I am sick and tired of my reaction to these horrific acts changing from, oh no, that is terrible, to, oh no, not again.
1 minute, Lori.
This cycle of killing and violence must stop. This is our chance to stop it. As a teen, I should only have to worry about exam grades. I should not have to ask myself, will I come back home from school today? I am an individual life. I do not want to become a statistic.
Thank you, Lori. May the record reflect that we've been joined by Councilman Burgess. May we have our next registered speaker, please? Welcome. May I have your last name?
Hawkeiser. Hawkeiser?
Yes, thank you. Maria Fay?
Sure.
I'm not trying to be confrontational. Can you help me out here? Is it Maria?
It's Maya.
Maya, thank you.
Every morning when I walk into school, I have my bag checked and I have to go through a metal detector. It's my first year to school where I have to do this, but somehow, over the course of a few months, it's already started to feel normal. The same thing happened when we did an active shooter drill a couple months ago. It felt like something that I should just expect to happen because it's necessary. And to me, it's sort of scary that that's necessary. I don't want to have to go around school thinking, is there going to be a shooter coming? And that's how it feels like. It feels like I have to constantly be on guard. And that's not because, well, I don't remember what I was going to say then. And that's because these things have become so common. They've become so common that they don't even seem terrific anymore. They just seem like a part of life. And that's what really scares me. That scares me more than the guns. It scares me more than anything else that could happen to me. It scares me that people are so violent with guns that it's not shocking anymore. And when I learned that there were these proposed laws in Pittsburgh, I was really, really happy because I realized that it only takes one place to start a whole big ripple effect.
John.
And that Pittsburgh can be the place to start everywhere to make everybody be able to feel comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you. Hi, may I have your last name, please?
Rothstein.
Okay, bear with me 1 second, please. Okay, Simone, thank you, welcome.
Hi, I'm coming here as a resident who lives in Pittsburgh and also an 11th grader in a Pittsburgh school. Some might use my age to undermine what I have to say, but I know that I have a right to be here because I have educated myself on the legislation. I have been in 2 active shooter situations.
May we please keep it down so we can hear the speakers. Please be mindful and respectful of everyone's right to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that I have a right to be here as someone who is an American. I have my First Amendment right to say what's on my mind and free speech, and I also have the right to be here as someone who has educated themselves on the legislation, and as someone who has been in 2 active shooter situations, and I'm only 16 years old, so I know that this affects me. Thank you. Although Realty.com named Pittsburgh one of the safest cities in America, 1/5 of all Pittsburgh's homicides last year occurred in around 20 minutes in one location. No person should have the means to murder 11 people and leave such a dark stain on all of our souls in such a tragically short period of time. It only took him minutes. Pittsburgh no longer feels like a safe city to me as a student, nor as a Jew. I'm going to try and keep my statement relatively short because I have cried and I have mourned and I have feared for my life and the lives of my family and my friends, and I am emotionally spent. But I am here because I know that common sense gun legislation is a large part of the solution. And I am sure that you do too. Please remember that you have the power to help make Pittsburgh a positive example for cities around the United States. I fully support common sense gun legislation because it saves lives. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak, giving all these people the opportunity to speak, and for listening to us.
Thanks, Simone. Thank you. May we have our next speaker, please? May we have our next registered speaker, please? Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, sir. May I begin with your last name, please?
Ankrum.
Ackland?
Ankrum.
Will you spell that for me, please, sir?
A-N-K-R-O-M.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Mark.
Yes, sir. As a veteran, a U.S. citizen, and a city resident, I'm appalled at your notion of denying me the right to self-protection or anyone else's legal right. Why are you not outraged at the felons perpetuating the crimes against our city and society? Why would you ask the legal citizen that could offer the police assistance in a dire situation to give up the rights to protect and serve if needed? Pittsburgh police do a wonderful job in a bad situation, often none of us want. But they are minutes away when seconds count, on the street, in our cars, in the church, or in our homes. We have this right and want to exercise it fully, and will fight you to retain this right. Why is the mayor and city council so determined to erode our rights given to us by the Constitution and the laws of this land set forth long before this discussion? Why are they delusional in breaking their oath of office by claiming Pittsburgh as a sanctuary city for illegals, or by altering laws that they have no right to alter? You are not above the law. I wish all this illegal effort by the mayor and city council was put into constructive efforts like fighting the prejudice between different points of view, black on black violence, or the drug issue we face, or the gang activity that is spread throughout Pittsburgh and the surrounding area. This effort could be directed at safer schools with better support for the teachers and the staff and children, or the homeless situation and the hungry children in the city. These are tangible goals that are not addressed equally in this administration. I find the mayor and the city council to be in breach of their oaths of office, as well as disreputable in their commitment to serve the office they swore to uphold. I believe they need impeached and replaced sooner than later. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to go over this. Thank you. May I have your last name first, please?
Yes, Cummings, C-U-M-M-I-N-G-S.
Thanks, Stephen.
That's right.
Thanks, Stephen.
Hi,
I'm living in Greenfield in the city. I've been living in Pittsburgh for 6 years. I'd like to start by sharing a story about me and my wife. Something happened to us a couple years ago. We were victims of a stalker while we've been living in Pittsburgh. In that incident, we were pursued around our neighborhood whilst in our vehicle, before finally making it into the shelter of our own house, where we were secured thanks to a firearm and nothing else. That experience has laid clear that no one should accept limits on the means that they can use to defend themselves. It took the police minutes to arrive, and I don't fault them for that. But if I didn't have the means to defend myself, I would have faulted myself forevermore. Following on from that, both the firearm ordinances proposed have carve-outs or botched carve-outs for law enforcement. Justification often given is that these are other in other places is that police need to have the appropriate means to protect their lives from responding to incidents on duty or even when off duty. If a police officer responding to a violent incident at my house has the right to protect himself with a so-called assault weapon and a standard capacity magazine, well, guess what? I have that same right. I've just been in that scenario, and I have to defend my family before anybody else can turn up and do it for me. So morally and logically, those ordinances make zero sense. As for the ordinances themselves, it's obvious from looking at them that the ordinances have been shoddily copy and pasted from other laws around the country. Indeed, part of Ordinance 1218 appears to include exact copy of firearms listed in a 1993 Connecticut House Bill 7332, of which virtually all the listed firearms are no longer produced or supported by their manufacturers.
1 minute, please.
All this is to say that these laws have not been thought out or researched in any way at all. The majority of you councillors here today and Mayor Peduto have shown no sincerity in seeking to pass feasible, practical and effective legislation, and this further underscores your unworthiness to have such laws carved out from Home Rule Charter. The people of Pittsburgh, despite your claims, are not highly partisan, hysterical or reactionary, and do not support banning virtually all modern firearms and standard capacity magazines produced in the last 90 years. To that end, should these ordinances pass, you can expect private criminal complaints to flood the office of our DA, Stephen Sapala, and not just for violating preemption, but also for official repression, Section 5301. And ironically, once convicted, these offenses would preclude you from owning a firearm.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next person, please. Next speaker, please. Good evening. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Jim Sobey, and I'm from Mount Washington.
Thank you.
Hi, Mickey. How you doing? You're acting like it. Title 18, Pennsylvania Statute 6120. No county, municipality, or township may in any manner regulate the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms, ammunition, or ammunition components when carried or transported for purposes not prohibited by the laws of this Commonwealth. Is that unclear to y'all? What part of it don't you understand? Can I help to explain it? You're an anarchist then? You don't believe in law? You realize there are rules of impeachment. It takes 20 signatures before a common pleas court judge to impeach any one or all of you. That includes the mayor, and that includes the attorney that said that wouldn't happen. You're also in violation of the Constitution. And we're not just talking about 21, we're talking about 1, we're talking about 8, Amendment 1, Amendment 8, and several other parts of the Constitution of Pennsylvania. How dare you? That's called sedition. Haven't you learned that word in grade school, in high school, in some kind of civics class? You're placing yourselves at one hell of a lot of risk for no reason, because you can't do anything. Courts will never uphold anything you decide to do here. You know that. So why the political show? It's not going to move the state legislature. You know that too, otherwise you would have presented bills there. Hysteria does not work to move the citizens of this Commonwealth. This is Pittsburgh. I grew up here. I was born and raised on North Side. You think I'm going to worry about what some idiot out someplace else is doing? I have a right to protect myself. I have a right to protect my family. It's in the state constitution. It's in the federal constitution.
1 minute, please.
And guess what? You guys do not have the right to prevent me. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Good evening. Next speaker.
Sorry.
I said good evening. Will you state your name and...
Yes, my name is Nicholas Wells.
Thanks, Nick. Where do you live, please?
I actually live in City View on the north side.
Thanks, Nick.
I'm an Allegheny County concealed weapons permit holder. I've grown up around firearms and was taught firearms safety at a young age. I later did 2 tours in Iraq in 2003 and 2005 with the Army, and have been an EMT for 10 years. I have been shot at and treated gunshot wounds. I understand the dangers of firearms and the damage they can enact probably better than 80% of the people in this room today. And yet, I'm opposed to the ordinances that are being brought before us today. They are a knee-jerk reaction to a tragedy, not a well-thought-out solution to the true problem we're facing. The truth is that the vast majority of gun-related crimes are committed with a handgun, and according to a study by UPMC, around 80% of those guns were not in the hands of the legal owner. Many were stolen, traded, or straw purchased. Since 2012, the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police recovered more than 3,600 guns from suspects, and roughly 2,600 of those firearms are believed to have been carried illegally. Of the 5 homicides this year that I've found evidence on, 2 were committed by felons already, one of which had a prior gun charge that was dropped. 2018 had around 94 murders. And of the roughly half that had suspect details, 9 were committed by persons under 21 who are already not allowed to have a pistol, 14 had prior felonies and were not allowed to have a weapon at all, and 8 had prior gun charges. Of those murders, none of them would have been prevented by these bills. Murder is a crime, and yet having that law in place did not stop people from being killed. According to the FBI, less than 3% of the homicides nationwide are with rifles, and far less are by AR-15 rifles. Your chance to be killing by a firearm are 1 in 100,000. The odds by an AR-15, 1 in 30 million. I have an AR-15. I built it myself, completely illegal. I don't plan on using it to commit a crime. I plan on using it for target practice and home defense. I enjoy shooting, and a large number of veterans I shoot with use an AR-15 to relieve their stress. And you know what we use? 30-round magazines.
1 minute, Nick.
Roger. A magazine restriction would do nothing, or little to lessen the number of killings, as vast majority are committed with only a couple shots and one-on-one. The only exception I could find was the Tree of Life tragedy. That is the only exception in our area that I've found. And you know, it is a single incident in which 11 lives were lost. However, we're facing nearly daily shootings with already illegal weapons, and that's what you should focus on, not us law-abiding citizens. And yet here we are debating a bill that is already illegal by our state constitution, and you, the members of City Council, are just pawns right now, being shuffled around by the mayor, who would rather run to D.C. when the bill he pushed for is brought up. He's more concerned about his political stance than he is about his constituents. I hope you all think for yourselves, learn the truth behind the problems we are facing, and not follow the mayor blindly. He is throwing you all to the wolves while he sits in his ivory towers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, can I have your last name, please?
My last name is Gehring.
With a G?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, David. Welcome.
From the city of Pittsburgh. I want to start by saying I love and respect the police, and I'm thankful to the council for giving us the opportunity to discuss this proposed legislation. I'm definitely not a gun nut. I'm a family man, and their safety is my utmost importance. It's clear that the mayor and some of those on city council are not worried about the Second Amendment or our state laws, which states, the right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. So let's think through this. Many people probably don't know this, but the police are not obligated to protect you. A Long Island stabbing victim found that out the hard way in 2013. A simple Google search will provide a half-dozen examples of court cases stating just that date back to the 80s. So why do police have weapons if not to protect our physical well-being, I ask? To protect themselves when they run into criminals. So common sense would tell you that guns must work pretty well for self-defense, and we should have them in case we run into criminals too. Who's at the biggest disadvantage if they're disarmed? The elderly and women, because they're the most vulnerable in physical confrontations. A senior citizen or the average woman are very much less likely to overpower an attacker. Imagine not an unarmed, but a disarmed mother or grandmother at home with small children trying to defend herself against an intruder for 10 minutes until the cops show up. If she can get to her phone, that is. What unnecessary physical and emotional damage will they endure? One study states 3 out of 5 criminals report being or knowing of someone that was scared off by a good guy with a gun.
1 minute,
no
David.
shots even fired.
1 minute, David.
Whose side are you on? For the mayor to go on TV and dare the DA and local authorities to uphold the law is a sign of the times. For the government's fear of the people, there is liberty. For when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And it doesn't sound like he's too worried about us. Imagine a burglar going on live TV daring the authorities to arrest him for knowingly breaking the law, as if us upholding the law will make a martyr of him and not a common criminal. Laws apply to everyone. Citizens have the means to protect themselves. It's a part of a delicate balance of power. The fact that we have a local government that wants to send people with guns to remove guns from law-abiding, tax-paying citizens underscores the right to bear arms is needed just as much today as it ever was.
Time. Is the time up? Thank you. Can we have our next speaker? May I begin with your last name, please?
McCarthy.
McCarthy. Hold with me just 1 second, please. McCarthy Laura?
Yes.
Welcome, thank you.
I'm a City of Pittsburgh resident. I'm a mental health worker with 12 years of experience. We ask a lot of questions in mental health. One of our most important assessment questions is about gun access. You may wonder why I would bring up mental health treatment when it only applies to a small part of our population. Statistics tell us that 1 in 5, or about 20% of Americans, will seek mental health treatment in a given year. That's a significant percentage, especially considering how many people want or need treatment and don't get it. You may also wonder why mental health workers are so concerned about gun access. The short answer is suicide prevention. Higher household firearm ownership levels are strongly associated with higher rates of suicide. When gun deaths and accidents happen in a public way, people often lament the lack of mental health care of the shooting person. That could lead people to believe that we have some special clinical way of stopping gun tragedies and mental health. We don't. Going back to the start of my speech, we ask about gun access, and whenever possible, we remove that access. That's it. That's the magical thing that we do. I applaud any efforts to reduce overall access to dangerous items and to protect all of our citizens. We mental health workers can't bear the responsibility of this by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
The last thing I want to say is to list some people that were killed by guns. I think I have a little time.
Okay.
Pittsburghers Jonathan Freeman, Antoine Rose, Joyce Feinberg, Richard Gottfried, Jerry Rabinowitz, Cecil Rosenthal, David Rosenthal, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Melvin Wax, and Irving Younger.
Thank you very much, Laura. May we have our next speaker then, please? Hi, welcome. May I have your last name, please?
It's Handley.
Handley, if you'll just bear with me 1 second.
Sure.
I don't have a Handley. H-A-N-D-L-E-Y?
Yes, sir.
I'm very sorry, I don't have a Handley registered.
Jody Handley. I signed up on the website.
Okay, Jody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I had a speech prepared. I think that a woman came up earlier and she covered most of my talking points, like the first clause of the Second Amendment being well regulated and, you know, all that kind of business. But actually, I've decided to change my mind and respond to some messages that have been cast into the crowd by a gentleman at my left. He's been holding up a cell phone to show people certain things.
What? Hey.
Come out of order. Like the councilman had said, this is a professional meeting. Act as such, or you will be removed. Do you understand?
This isn't Three Rivers Stadium.
Specifically, I wanted to address some of the things that he held up silently while the children were up here speaking. Apparently, cowards use children to push an agenda. I would argue that cowards sacrifice children to push an agenda. Who coached the kids, he asked. Well, my answer to that is you did, sir. You coached them. By letting them know they don't actually matter and that they have to speak for themselves because no one else will. And that it doesn't matter that they go to school afraid, and it doesn't matter that my 7- and 9-year-old have hidden under desks in shooting. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it? It's so funny, I can hear us all laughing. So that's who coached them, folks. You did. You all did. Fortunately, they had the bravery to come up and speak in front of people while those behind them laughed. And I hope that you will have the bravery to continue to stand in what you believe. And if this doesn't make it, and it might not, I hope you continue to stand for the things that those kids need. And if we really want to help those with mental health, let's make sure that they actually have health care. If we really want to make sure that there are no homeless people on the street, let's raise the minimum wage. Let's do lots of things to make sure that people live better lives so they don't feel like they need to pick up guns against other people. Because there are lots of things we can do besides keep guns out of the hands of people who don't need them. But that sure is a really quick way to make sure that more people don't get shot while we're waiting for other people to decide that their tax dollars are worth investing in public education and a better minimum wage and a better living for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, Jody. May we have our next speaker, please? Sir, can I start with your last name?
Rao, Romeo, Oscar, Whiskey, Edward.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
Rao, Romeo, Oscar, Whiskey, Edward. R-O-W-E.
Just... Thanks, Conroy.
Members of council, I come before you today to voice my opinion against this proposed legislation. As a lifelong resident of Allegheny County and a contractor who works in the city limits on a daily basis, I have seen the revitalization of this city from the inside and the out. As I researched my speaking points today, I came across some very interesting statistics that were published in the Post-Gazette on October 17, 2018. Over the past 5 years, gun violence in the city of Pittsburgh has decreased and has reached an all-time low, in fact, a decades-length low in 2017. In fact, in 2018, there were 75 gun-related non-fatal injuries and only 45 fatalities due to guns as of October 1st, 2018, when the article was published. That was down from the 2017 marks of 103 and 75. While no one here can overlook the tragedy in Squirrel Hill, simply enacting another law that would have been broken is not the correct solution. There are proper ways and proper procedures to enact gun reform of some sort. However, it is not at this level. If enacted, all this legislation would do is cause law-abiding citizens to become criminals by simply driving through the city. Measures like this have been tried in Pennsylvania, and all of them have been shot down by the courts. Even the district attorney, who does have an interest in this city, Mr. Mayor, stated that this legislation would be unenforceable. I would like to point out that the mayor values the public's opinion so much that he couldn't even be bothered to be here tonight. Instead of wasting the city's time, resources, and the alleged pro bono representation to defend the action, let's put it to better use. The Gun Violence Intervention Program has resulted in better community involvement and safety. Even Police Commander Victor Joseph has been quoted as saying that he credits the decline to a variety of factors, including the police department's 9-person GVI unit and the bureau-wide efforts to improve police-community relations and embrace the philosophy of group violence intervention, which is built on the premise that a small percentage of the population drives the majority of the city's gun violence, so focusing on those at-risk people can yield large drops in violence. I have had the experience of having to use my personal sidearm to defend myself and other workers on job sites within the city limits. This is a perfect example of how responsible gun ownership is an asset to the city and what this group that you see before you brings to the city every day. I hope that this council finds a better way to address the issues at hand and does not continue to pass legislation using the bodies from a tragedy as a platform.
Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Donald. Appreciate it. Hi, sir, can I have your last name?
Calloway.
Okay. C?
With a C,
Scott?
yes. That's correct.
Thanks, Scott. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not a criminal. the state police, the FBI, the Department of Defense, the head usher's office at the White House, if you so care to choose to investigate it, will prove that. But by virtue of you folks passing this ordinance, you will make me a felon. And that doesn't sit very well with me. In 1988, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I've taken that oath numerous times over the last several years, or over my lifetime. I hold it very dear to my heart. The values that I have learned in the Marine Corps, the discipline that is instilled in me, and along with that oath, resonate deep within me. If you are not on the right side of history, Mr. O'Connor, you know where I'm going with that. There's only one right side of history, this side of the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution states the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. The Constitution of Pennsylvania states the right shall not be questioned. State law prevents this municipality, this council, from passing an unlawful order. I would implore every sworn officer here today who has taken a similar oath to basically take into custody anybody who would vote yes to this ordinance. Understand, we don't want to oppose you, but if you infringe upon our rights, I'm telling you, as short as I'm standing here, I will not comply. And understand my sincerity and understand how honest I am being with you. I will not comply, and thousands more will not. I'm going to beg you to be long in thought, slow to act, but I'm going to beg that you tread carefully. Decide what side of the Constitution you are on. There's the right side and there's the wrong side. And you are not on the right side, Mr. O'Connor. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next speaker, please. Hi, welcome. Can I start with your last name, please?
Pelusi with a P.
Okay, give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
Pelusi. Yes, Gina, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council men and women. Thank you for hosting this public hearing and giving all of the members of the community an opportunity to speak. My name is Gina Pelusi, and I'm here tonight as a resident of the Pittsburgh area and a survivor of gun violence. Believe me when I say that that is never something that I thought that I would say. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood where violent crime was extremely rare, but the reality is gun violence can happen anywhere and to anyone. Nearly 5 years ago, my mom, Ruth Ann Lodato, answered a knock at the door of my childhood home in Alexandria, Virginia, and a man that she did not know shot her multiple times. He then entered our house and was face to face with my grandmother's caregiver, who he also shot and wounded before he fled the scene. Wounded, my grandmother's caregiver courageously made her way to a neighbor who called 911. My mom was airlifted to a local hospital, but the damage was too great, and she passed away that afternoon. Even when I got a phone call saying something bad had happened that day, it never crossed my mind that my mom could die. Many people fear that as a culture we have become numb to gun violence and mass shootings. Only in America is the phrase, "yet another mass shooting," part of our vocabulary. 100 Americans are killed and hundreds of others are wounded every single day. We cannot afford to become numb to these tragedies. The way that I will do that is I will continue to talk about my mom, because I carry her with me every single minute of every single day. She was the toughest, hardest working woman I've ever known. She was a small business owner, she was a mother, a teacher, a caregiver, and a musician. She did it all, and she made it look effortless.
1 minute.
But the reality is she was taken from me and my family and our community, and I certainly will not quit any sort of gun violence prevention just because things are getting hard. I am here tonight in support of the City Council's legislation. Taking action to reduce gun violence is in our community is consistent with supporting the Second Amendment. We know we can do more, especially after the senseless act of gun violence that shattered our city 3 months ago. I am so grateful that the City Council is doing everything they can to prevent even just one more death by gun violence. I am here tonight to give a voice to the victims lost in Squirrel Hill, to the survivors, and to my mom, Ruth Ann. I am here to honor their lives with action. Thank you very much.
Gina. Sorry for your loss, Gina. Thank you. Hi, welcome. Could I start with your last name, please?
Sure, it's Paulat, P-A-U-L-A-T.
Thank you, Gina. Jenna.
My name is Jenna Paulat.
City of Pittsburgh, I'm sorry?
I live in the North Hills of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
I've been a gun violence prevention advocate for about 4 years. During that time, I have mourned for far too many mass shootings. Charleston, San Bernardino, Orlando, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, Parkland, and so many others. Senseless shootings that are so frequent and so common that they sometimes almost blend together. On October 27, when I heard the term another mass shooting on TV, I looked up at the screen and I immediately saw the faces of City Councilman Corey O'Connor and Mayor Peduto's Chief of Staff, Dan Gilman, standing on a familiar sidewalk. And I knew right away, this time it was us. I stand with the City of Pittsburgh in its efforts to prevent future tragedies like we endured at the Tree of Life. Much has been said about the city's authority to protect its people in this way, and there is no shortage of talk about lawsuits that will be filed against the city if these ordinances pass. And that is because guns receive special treatment unlike any other industry in this country. Most states, like Pennsylvania, have laws that preempt cities from regulating guns, saying that those decisions must be made at the state level. And the reason that gun laws have these special rules is quite simple. The gun lobby and the NRA have had a stranglehold on our lawmakers for a long time. Rather than promote sensible gun laws such as background checks, which the vast majority of NRA members support, NRA leadership looks to protect corporate profits through the sales of more guns and more ammunition. The NRA has dominated the conversation of legislative offices for much of my lifetime, but not anymore. Gun violence prevention groups are changing the narrative. Support for common sense gun measures is at an all-time high.
1 minute, Jenna.
Across the country, across Pennsylvania, and even right here in Pittsburgh, those on the side of gun sense are going to win the conversation. We are here to say enough is enough. We stand strong demanding common sense gun laws that can respect the Second Amendment and responsible gun ownership, while also doing more to keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of dangerous people. We know that we are not free in America if we cannot enter our schools, movie theaters, malls, and places of worship without the fear of facing dangerous people who carry weapons that are designed to kill a large number of people in a very short amount of time. So thank you to City Council, and especially to Corey O'Connor and Erica Strasburger.
Time's up, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. May we have our next speaker, please? Hi, welcome. Can I have your last name, please?
Moreno, M-O-R-E-N-O.
Thanks, Anthony.
My name's Anthony Moreno. I'm the City of Pittsburgh police resident from the north side. Thank you, Ms. Harris and Ms. Smith, for driving this so we could be heard. In 1968 or 69, a man named Samuel Halsey, better known as Salahuddin to us, one of your previous contemporaries, was a freedom rider, and he drove to Mississippi to help blacks to vote and register to vote. That man was pulled from his car and beaten horribly. He decided that he was going to carry a weapon to protect himself from the Klan of the Democratic Party that was trying to prevent these people from voting. He was arrested because of a gun law that said that black men weren't allowed to carry guns. He said that he would rather face the police for carrying a weapon illegally than face the Klan. It's strange today that we're back here 50 years later with a council full of Democrats trying to fleece free Americans from their Second Amendment right to protect themselves. The government can't protect me as well as I can protect myself in the way that I choose. The government can't protect my family the way that I can protect my family, that my family can protect themselves with the firearms that we choose. It's impossible to sit here and say that we're going to ask our police officers to take an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then ask them to violate that same Constitution with this gun law, any gun law that prevents us from legally carrying a firearm of our choice. Instead of asking the question of why did these tragedies happen, there's a knee-jerk reaction to immediately attack the Second Amendment. In the same line that you encourage the First Amendment by allowing people in the street to voice their opinion, to stand in the face of police officers and call them horrible names and threaten their lives, spend millions of dollars to allow people come and express their opinion in the G20, you go ahead and allow that, but you don't support the Second Amendment. Please remember that there are better ways to go after this. Use your police officers, because they are dedicated from top to bottom to find the people that will commit these crimes. Utilize them. They're there. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Welcome.
Gordon Sullivan, Carrick.
Thanks, Gordon.
As a lifelong Democrat, I'm appalled and ashamed of what the party across America and now in Pittsburgh has become. The party is on a witch hunt on the Second Amendment and the First Amendment everywhere in America. When will they realize more gun laws won't work? Look at Chicago, 20+ shootings every day, some of the strictest gun laws in America. Quit trying to shove gun control down our throats. How about enforcing the laws that are on the books, starting with enforcing the death penalty instead of letting criminals sit for years on death row? Restricting abiding citizens' right to carry and bear arms is not going to do anything to stop gun violence. Council and Mayor Peduto are an embarrassment not only to themselves and their careers, but to our city, stating they will break laws both constitutional and state to pass their agenda. Get to the last page. How dare Council and the Mayor try to pass laws on us, all the while blatantly breaking laws? If Council and the Mayor vote yes, then they should face criminal charges the same way they want to do to their constituents. Thank you if you're if you think you have legislative immunity, we have constitutional immunity. Guaranteed. God bless America, God bless Pittsburgh, and we will not comply.
Thanks, Gordon. Thanks. Next speaker. Welcome. Sir, will you start with your last name, please?
Horwitz.
I'm sorry, help me with the spelling.
H-O-R-W.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Welcome.
Okay. Well, I'm a local employer, and in the space of a few years, one of my co-workers' wives was shot dead. Another one lost all of his guns, a big gun collection in a robbery. Another one found a dying man outside his house, just where his daughter was about to be dropped off after school, again shot. I've lived in Pittsburgh a fair time. I've used the great race experience with my family to run downtown for a lot of years. I've felt safe in that time, being able to join in that big community of people and not fear getting shot. But of course, I also am a member of one of the congregations that was recently the target of a mass shooting, and it doesn't feel so safe anymore. This is a stain that will stay with the city as long as the stain of the Birmingham bombings has stayed with the city of Birmingham. It will never go away, and I'm very sorry about that. I think everything that you can do to ease the stain on the city and encourage the feeling that Pittsburgh is possibly a safe city again for my family, this time grandchildren, to consider being their home would be a very good thing. Everything that you can do to limit and stand up for public safety in our community. After all, our legislators in the House of Representatives in Harrisburg and in the federal realm have gerrymandered their positions, and they are no longer representing us. You are in charge of public safety. They have devolved it to you. Please act if they are too corrupt and too unrepresentative to act for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for being here. May we have our next registered speaker, please? And would you begin with your last name, please?
Komanchik.
Oh, Chris. I don't have you here, Chris. Yeah. Oh, no, I do. There you go, Chris. Welcome.
Dear Pittsburgh City Council, fellow Pittsburghers and other friends from afar, I do not believe that I need to elaborate much further as to why we are here today. Plenty of us have already done a tremendous job of that. Bottom line, we oppose this gun legislation, and I want you to know I absolutely agree with the legitimate gun owners of this city. I'm here to provide you all with a much better alternative. If you are fed up with the horrible leadership of this city, then hear this. My name is Chris Komanchik, and I am currently running against City Council President Bruce Krause for the Pittsburgh District 3 seat. I am a Pennsylvania State Constable for Pittsburgh's 4th Ward, and I'm a proud card-holding member of the NRA. Whether left, right, Democrat, Republican, conservative, or liberal, I believe that it is time for us all to start working together. Well, I am here today working for each and every one of you. If you want to put this issue to rest once and for all, and you want to get rid of those who are responsible for this nonsense, then join my efforts. Join my campaign and help me make sure that on May 21st, 2019, I represent you by becoming the next councilman from Pittsburgh's District 3. If you want to protect your guns, then anyone you know from my district needs to get out and vote for me. We are sick and tired of having this stupid discussion. So hear this, President Krause and other supporters of this ridiculous proposal. Our guns are not going anywhere. You are.
Welcome to the race, Chris. Can we have the next speaker, please? Hi, may I have your last name, please?
Fingeret.
Please help me.
F like Frank, I-N-G-E-R-E-T.
Thank you, Andrew. Welcome.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for hosting this hearing for all of us and for letting so many voices to have the chance to speak. Just the other week, I was having a discussion with my history teacher about his experiences as a student in the Cold War. Every so often, he and his classmates would watch Bert the Turtle instruct them on how to duck and cover under their desks in order to protect themselves in the event of a nuclear attack. The students had the mindset that if they didn't take action, they could be killed in the blast. They lived in fear, knowing the question was not if this would happen, but when. Students today, like myself, face a similar question. However, instead of the threat being a missile aimed at the nation, it is a gun aimed at our heads. As students in the United States come of age, we bear witness to tragedy after tragedy, shooting after shooting, massacre after massacre, all at the hands of gun violence. 49 people killed in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, 59 people killed at the Las Vegas Strip, 17 students killed at the Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, 11 people killed at the Tree of Life Synagogue here in Pittsburgh. The nightmare here in October made me realize how present and dangerous this threat is. The synagogue is in my neighborhood, less than a mile away from me. I myself drove past it on the way to work, minutes before the shooting started. For the first time, I had a list of people to call to make sure they were safe. My grandparents, who live on Beechwood Boulevard. My 2 best friends, one of whom lives 2 blocks away from Tree of Life. I called a dozen of my family members and my friends, fearing for the worst of any of them. I know I am lucky to say that everyone I knew was safe, because there are so many throughout this city who cannot say the same. For the safety and stability of the people of Pittsburgh, for all of our friends and family, these laws must be passed. Here in this moment, we have a chance not just to change history, but change the question for our lives from when to if. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for being here. Hi, welcome, Ms. Brown. Please.
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live in the Hill District. I'm an activist. I say I'm an advocate for children, youth, families, hospital workers, ex-state workers, the elderly, and the children. I say all that because I've been coming to City Council for over 20 years. I have become disillusioned with this City Council. The first place is, look at what just cost here. I'm not fussing because the people are here. I thank every one of you that come, every one, because we die for lack of knowledge. I hear the police, especially the police, and there's other people saying about the constitutional right to have a gun. When the Constitution was written, they didn't have AK-47s. I want you to understand how I feel. You have Wilkinsburg, 10 minutes, Monroeville. You can go to Monroeville and you can buy a gun, an AK-47, in maybe an hour. You can come back, Wilkinsburg, where there's killings. You can come back and you can kill 50, 60 people at a time. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's some guns, and I was just talking to a policeman that said there's actually other guns that can shoot as many as the AK-47. We don't need them here in the United States. Send them over there to the war. Do you understand that you keep on saying about the Constitution? Change it then, like you did for the police review. You change it so that we can fight and say that we don't want AK-47s. Why do we need an AK-47?
1 minute, Ms. Brown.
Think about it. Okay, then I'm gonna change now. I see here when you're talking about Guy Costa is leaving. Good riddance. He also said Valerie McDonald, the last two of the mayor, is going. Good riddance. I say that because, like I said, you die for lack of knowledge. Costa, when he left here, owed this city for a machine that they told him to take back, and he kept it for $12,000. If he's gonna retire again, make sure he pays it. When I speak about Valerie McDonald, who is a black woman, and I know they're gonna say, oh, a black woman speaking against a black woman, when we had a woman that was pregnant, she didn't bother with that. You had the mayor take and tell Sean, a black man.
Time's up, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you understand.
Thank you. Hi. Welcome. Can I begin with your last name, please?
Hi. Last name is Chernoff, C-H-E-R.
Would you bear with me just 1 second?
I'm in Shady Side.
Yes. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you. My name is Ben. I'm 26 years old. I was born and raised on the other side of Pennsylvania, but I've come to call Pittsburgh my home as a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University. I study the brain in neurosurgery patients who I work with every day. When I was in college in Washington, D.C., I ran to the White House twice to celebrate. Once when bin Laden was killed, and once when Barack Obama won the election, which I proudly supported. Times have changed since then. I'm here today to implore all of you on the council to consider these and all other ordinances based on their predictable outcome and not the purity of their intention. Many of your constituents don't know about Section 6120A of Title 18, the preemption clause that a lot of other people have spoken about, or any of the relevant case law like Ortiz versus Commonwealth, Schneck versus Philadelphia, Clark versus House of Representatives, and others. But each of you knows about this. You know that these laws will be struck down in court, but only after an expensive legal battle that we the people will fund. All of you know this, even if you don't admit it. In many conservative areas of the country, cities and even states have enacted severe regulations on abortion. Many have argued, yeah, sure, right now it's illegal, but if enough of us pass these illegal laws, perhaps we'll finally send the message that we're really serious about these unconstitutional laws, it hasn't worked, and it's unlikely to work. All of us yearn for change, and the tragedy that struck this city where my fellow Jews were slaughtered was an abomination. But I ask you to ask yourselves, what good will an ordinance that will never be enforceable do for the survivors of this tragedy and the families of the dead? Are you honoring them by making no difference in the end when these laws are struck in court, which again, each of you know they will, and many people here know they will as well, by making no difference? What matters more to each of you?
1 minute.
Thank you. Making symbolic gestures that sound really good and pander and aid in your re-election, or actually creating change? Which of those things do you want to be remembered for?
Thanks, Ben. Hi, welcome. May I have your last name, please?
Bridges.
Bridges?
Cranberry Township.
Yeah, Ashby?
Yes.
Thank you, welcome.
Council members, today I speak in opposition of the proposed gun ordinance. I'm not here to repeat the many arguments in favor of our constitutional gun rights, which some of you have already heard. I'm not here to repeat the FBI statistics that show that gun control does not work. I am here to give a common family man perspective on how these ordinances can affect us. My family visits Pittsburgh approximately 1 time a week. I'm a father of 3 children, 5 years old and under, and we enjoy the restaurants in the South Side and the events in the venue on the Wedge. Whenever I get my kids ready to go and get in the minivan, I make sure they have shoes, make sure they have a coat to protect them from the weather, but I also make sure I have one other item to protect them, and that is a firearm. I conceal carry everywhere I go in Pittsburgh, but not everywhere in Cranberry. Why? According to the FBI data, the violent crime rate in Pittsburgh is 30 times the levels of Cranberry Township. Let me repeat that. The violent crime rate in Pittsburgh is 30 times the levels of Cranberry Township. Now, I don't even believe that I need a reason to carry a firearm, but I most certainly do. I am the provider of my family, and I'm the protector. I need to carry a firearm to protect them. The proposed ordinance is written such that it gives an exemption to concealed carry. However, it references a statute that doesn't exist. The ban also includes a wide range of firearms, all the way from anti-tank weapons, fully automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, and yes, even down to a BB gun. My daughter has her pink Red Ryder BB gun. When somebody says they're for common sense gun control, somehow I just don't think they are referring to a pink Red Ryder BB gun. If this ordinance is passed, several things will happen. Families like mine will visit Pittsburgh less, or just simple non-compliance with the ordinances. I'm here to encourage the council members to follow the Pennsylvania state law, specifically forbidding creating local gun laws. We do not need a hodgepodge of gun laws. It will not stop criminals, and it will only criminalize upstanding citizens that inadvertently break them. Thank you for your time. God bless America.
Thank you. God bless us. Hi, welcome. Can I have your last name, please?
Jaskowitz. I'm from Washington, Pennsylvania.
Okay,
I can spell that
hold
for
on
you.
for me just 1 second. Was it Jay?
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Peter.
Am I good?
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank the mayor for being here and also for you guys providing bathrooms in a public place.
You're welcome.
On October 27, 2019, an individual chose to disregard humanity and multiple laws when he murdered 11 people and injured 6 at the Tree of Life. It is illegal by the Crimes Code of Pennsylvania to commit murder, yet this individual chose to do it anyway. Tonight I approach you not representing my personal department, but as a representative of the law enforcement community. In my last 9 years as a law enforcement officer, I've watched as justice for crimes has become an assembly line of cases where the overburdened system moves cases along with new and repeat offenders with speed by administering reduced sentences and plea deals just to keep the system up and running and the overcrowded jails from deteriorating. Is this justice? From someone in the trenches who swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and this Commonwealth, not only as a law enforcement officer but as a United States Marine, I pose this question: is one crime less criminal than another? I'm not addressing the heinousness of the crime or the possible penalties. I'm addressing whether or not the criminal activity is criminal activity activity. I say this because Mr. Mayor, who's not here, and members of council, what you're proposing to pass is criminal activity by multiple sections of PA Title 18. You have already said that you recognize what you're doing is criminal, and you're choosing to ignore the law and commit the criminal act anyway. You are no different than the individual who chose to murder 11 people on October 27th, knowing that murder was a crime. You're not as heinous in its optics, but your proposed criminal act is no less heinous because you will be violating the civil rights of your constituents, the civil rights of PA residents, your oath to uphold and defend the Commonwealth Constitution, making you a domestic enemy, and committing the act of official oppression. Your proposed laws will not stop acts of violence that have pervaded the human condition since Cain killed Abel. Even with strict gun laws, we see that mass acts of gun violence in major cities like Chicago and countries like France and Japan, which has strict gun laws, saw 19 people stabbed to death in one incident in 2016. An assault weapons ban did not prevent Columbine, and neither did the multiple straw purchase laws. My suggestion to you all is to start acting like leaders who deserve to serve at our pleasure. We're a constitutional republic. Your actions are controlled by our Commonwealth and U.S. constitutions. Recognize your oath and act with honor or resign. Do your job and make the tough choices that are correct by our government system. Mr. O'Connell, the right side of history in 1775 allows you to make ignorant statements in regards to this issue. I say the same thing to you as well, Mr. Mayor. Do not make the good citizens of Pennsylvania criminals because you lack the intestinal fortitude to be good community leaders.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Where did you say you lived again? Peter. Okay. Thank you. Welcome. Washington.
Last name's Harding.
Harding?
First name Christopher.
Hold on, Chris, for me, please. I know you're here. Yeah, welcome, Chris. Thanks.
Okay, hey, I just want to give you a different perspective. I know I'm not up here as a fanatic, First and Second Amendment rights. You know, I just look at it as First Amendment. If you want to prevent me from speaking, that's what you're doing with the Second Amendment. You're preventing me from having a certain firearm. So you're not telling me what to say, how to say it, but yet you want to do that for the Second Amendment. Don't think that's fair. So let me give you a case in point with my situation. Special Forces medic, Bronze Star with Valor recipient, multiple air medals. I look like a Mexican general in my uniform. 18 years of service with the country, for our country, various places around the world. Also worked for the city. I'm a city employee. I was a medic. I've been on the tactical side as a SWAT medic. Now I work for the fire department, so I'm on the front line of everything that we see daily. That being said, I still have 2 years in the service. I'm deploying on Monday for my 10th combat deployment. 10th. That being said, I called Councilman O'Connor and expressed my concern. My concern was, with this ordinance, if I want to go train, I want to go to the shooting range to be proficient. Police officers have a proficiency. They go every year and qualify on the firearm for their service weapon. You're not allowing me as a resident to even have that opportunity, yet you want me to be a responsible gun owner. How can I be a responsible gun owner if I can't go to the shooting range to shoot? If I can't teach my wife to defend herself while I'm deployed? It makes me a criminal. I signed a pro-Lautenberg amendment. If I get pulled over, God forbid, not that I'm a law-abiding citizen, probably won't happen, but the probability is there. I get pulled over. I get a citation. I now have to clear that for my federal clearance, which is top secret SCI, which is the highest you can have. Chances are I'm not going to shoot up a school. I don't have any intention of it. Bottom line is, you've taken that opportunity away from me to train for my Special Forces job. You've also taken the opportunity for me to be a law-abiding citizen by taking that right to train my son how to defend himself, to train my wife how to defend herself while I'm deployed serving our great country. I don't think that's fair. Furthermore, if I get a citation, I could lose my security clearance. 18 years of service. I lose my security clearance, I can't maintain my job. Guess what happens? I don't get a retirement. Do you think that's a fair law? You two especially? Is that fair to me as an honorable person that has defended our U.S. Constitution around the world? Do you think that's fair that I could potentially lose my retirement on a law that's unconstitutional? With that being said, the mayor has a security detail. If he's so adamant about anti-gun, why does he have a security detail? Why doesn't he donate his security detail to the schools, to the places of worship? Put those 10 officers somewhere where they're actually utilized, not for protecting him. If he doesn't want guns, why does he have a protection detail? Just food for thought.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, can we have our next speaker? Hi, welcome. Can I have your last name, please?
Corey.
C-O-R-E-Y?
C.
I need your last name.
C-O-U-R-Y.
I'm sorry, I don't have you here.
You know what? I signed up online,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
they
All right.
have it.
We'll accept it because there can be confusion online. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, when I dropped off the petitions for this, I had no idea it would be so overwhelmingly popular. So thank you guys all for staying.
Oh, I do have you. Thank you.
First of all, I just think it is, I think it's very unfortunate that, sorry. Honestly, everything that happened with the Tree of Life shooting was horrible, and it breaks my heart. But I think it is horrible to mislead people into feeling safer with this legislation that will do absolutely nothing to protect them. Then, when the city gets sued for this legislation that's illegal, the mayor said, oh, well, it's not going to cost us any more money. And I want to know, does the mayor have a crystal ball that none of us are aware of? What if the court imposes a financial settlement? Like, who's going to pay that? Or we have this law firm who has offered to defend the city pro bono. Well, who is that law firm? I want to know who that is. Because what if they're being offered contracts? I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but we have a right to know. How about instead of the city spending money fighting a lawsuit that, you know, shouldn't happen in the first place because this legislation should not get passed, why don't we give our police officers a raise? They haven't had one in, what, 15 years? Because that'll make our city safer. That will incentivize people to come and work in the city, be police officers here. I don't even know that we have enough police officers on staff regularly. So now we have police officers working longer hours and they're tired and, you know, they're doing the best that they can, but let's, you know, start there. But thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Corey, where did you say you lived again?
South Hills.
Thank you. Okay, may we have our next speaker, please? Thank you. Welcome. Can I have your last name, please?
Landis. L-A-N-D-I-S.
Bear with me 1 second, please, Mr. Landis. Okay, Peter, welcome.
Thank you for having us here today. I'm not going to go into too many personal details about how I've been the victim of violent crimes in the past. I've had guns pulled on me. I've been shot at, most recently in Lawrenceville 2 years ago, which I have a lawsuit going right now for that. But I just want to say that I take complete and total umbrage at the council's blatant disregard for our constitutional rights, not only our states, but also our federal rights. So what I decided to do, and I have copies for everyone here, is the things I put down in case I don't have enough time to finish. I'm going to give you some of our founding fathers' thoughts as written about our gun ownership. And I tried to be as accurate as possible because I know there's a lot of misinformation on the internet when you look this up. Patrick Henry said, "Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are inevitably ruined." George Mason said, and to shorten it, he said, "To disarm the people is the most effectual way to enslave them." Richard Henry Lee said, "A militia, when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves, and include, according to the past and general usage of the states, all men capable of bearing arms. To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms, and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them." I know people say that, you know, you shouldn't have AR-15s or AK-47s because they didn't have them back then. But where does it say that that wasn't their intention in the Constitution? So, James Madison said, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the best and most natural defense of a free country." He also said, "The ultimate authority, wherever their derivative may be found, resides in the people alone." Noah Webster said, "Before a standing army can rule..."
1 minute, Peter.
I beg your pardon?
1 minute.
1 minute, all right, thank you. "Before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in almost every kingdom of Europe. The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword because the whole body of the people are armed, and they cannot constitute a force superior to any bands of regular troops that can be on any pretense raised in the United States." Sam Adams said, "The Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms." Thomas Jefferson said, "I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery." He also said, "What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? So let them take arms."
He also said, the Constitution of most of our states and of the United States assert that all power is inherent in the people, that they may exercise it by themselves, that it is their right and duty to be armed at all times. He also said, and this is the last one, the laws that forbid the carrying of arms are laws of such nature.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, I will leave you copies with these here.
With the clerk, please. Thank you. Okay, next speaker, welcome. May I start with your last name, please?
Weaver.
Weaver, bear with me just 1 minute. Thanks, Aaron, you're welcome.
No problem. So, y'all heard the proposed laws are in direct violation of state laws. You've heard this, you know this. So it's one of those, I'm not going to stand idly by and let this happen. You know, I take a look at this, my family roots go back through and are part of the Revolutionary War. My ancestors stood up back then against the government, and I stand today for my 5 homeschooled daughters. I will not let this happen. I will not let them become unarmed peasants outside of the king's walls, like you are trying to do with these proposed laws. My wife and myself carry every day, even at church. More people should do this. It is horrible what happened at the Tree of Life, but that doesn't give the city the right to limit our weapons and limit our capacity. This is nothing more than the left's first push with Wolf whispering in your ears to try to challenge our state's laws and disarm us. We will not let this happen. The weapon, accessories, and capacity we select to protect ourselves and our families shall not be infringed by the city. We have had a family pass for years at the Carnegie Museums and come to the city on a regular basis. We are respectful of their choice to not allow us to carry our guns in their buildings. As a private entity, they can do this. To criminals in the city, our homeschooled family of 7 appears to be an easy target, as our hands are full. There are times when my wife, with all 5 daughters, comes to the city. She's an even easier target. The cops won't be there to protect her. What you don't see is our family's honed weapon control, practice, and capacity with our clips that you're trying to ban. My daughters even know how to handle all these weapons that you're trying to ban, and they're very proficient with them. And they know, do not point them at a person, do not point them at themselves.
1 minute. 1 minute, Aaron.
Talked to Carl Metzger before I came out here. Might know that name. He stands fully with us and against this. In closing, a good friend of mine that I worked with for years was number 4 in a quadruple homicide with a knife. Your laws would do nothing to prevent that. Please keep that in mind. I stand here for my friend and my family. We will not comply.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Next speaker, please. Wind it down. Thank you. May I have your last name, please?
Herman, H-E-R-M-A-N.
Okay, if you bear with me just 1 minute, please. Okay, Dale, welcome.
Thank you. I live in Troy Hill. I am 16 years old, and I attend Pittsburgh SciTech. It isn't very important for me to speak here today because I want to make it known that not everybody in high school and students in general are standing with legislation like this and gun control in general. And I'm specifically here to say that I am against 2018-1218 and 2018-1219 being enacted because of that. I have 3 main points of contention: the indiscriminate nature of 1218 and 1219, the nonsensical nature of various sections in 1218 and 1219, and lastly, the pure legality of the proposed bills. Excluding the grandfather clause, both 1218 and 1219 apply to every civilian, with no way for those looking to do good the ability. Very differently, 1220 by design would not apply to every civilian. It respects the differences between civilians, and it respects that the majority of citizens are lawful and good. Many people are not against all gun control, but many are against all gun control that unfairly restricts the rights of citizens who aren't murderers, felons, and do good. No free, law-abiding citizens should ever have to justify and defend rights that have been given to them and are protected under the Bill of Rights. Contained within 1218 and 1219 are several sections that frankly don't make sense. My first example is within section 1A3 of 1218. Firstly, the definition of a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of a weapon should be clarified further. If enacted as currently proposed, it would leave the interpretation of what exactly is conspicuous to the law enforcement officer inspecting your weapon for any routine stop. This could lead to unjust subjectivity, where certain individuals could be the target of the strictest interpretation. Secondly, the entire inclusion of a bayonet mount or a grenade launcher within the definition of an assault weapon is ridiculous because bayonets would not be useful
in a mass shooting, and a grenade launcher would be useless because grenades are already banned at the federal level under the Crime Control Act of 1968. These are only a few examples, but they really bring into question how well the writers of the proposed legislation truly understand the topic of firearms. Probably most importantly is the question of how legal are these proposed ordinances. In short, not very. These ordinances not only violate the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, but also Article 1, Section 21 of the Constitution of Pennsylvania and Title 18, Section 6120 of the Consolidated Statutes of Pennsylvania. Collectively, these laws state that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, questioned, or regulated by any municipality inside the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Okay, Dale, thank you very much.
Councilman, welcome. I just need where you reside, please.
Sure, President Kraus. My name is Sam DeMarco. I'm the Allegheny County Councilman at Large. I reside in North Fayette, but I'm a Pittsburgh native, having been born in Mount Washington and raised in Mount Washington in Beechview. I come to you today as a fellow legislators to talk to you about, from a motive perspective, what is it that we really want to accomplish. And I say this because coming at the end of the line, I know you've already heard. Folks have come up and they've talked about how this violates the Pennsylvania and the U.S. Constitution. You've had folks come up and talk to you about how really, in 2017, the last year we have data, there were 15,000 murders, only 403 were committed with rifles. Now that's not AR-15s, that's rifles in total. So they have a very small number there. More people were killed with hands and feet, with knives or hammers. So that's not the issue. We've also heard folks come to you today and talk about a wide variety of reasons why they believe this legislation is bad. What I want to talk to you about is, do we want to make a difference in our communities? This legislation, if passed, in my view, and many others, will be instantly tossed the minute it is challenged and it hits court. But I can tell you that on Saturday, October 27th, I was as horrified as all of you and as all the citizens of this region were with the events that took place out in Squirrel Hill. I stood in solidarity and in unison with many of you out at the Emergency Services Center while we took and tried to respond to this. How do we repair a fractured community? How do we help them heal? And then what do we do to try to ensure that this is never going to happen again? You heard people come up and talk about, well, we can pass common sense gun legislation. No law that you pass that a murderer chooses to ignore is going to stop him from taking and committing it. We've learned in Prohibition, we've learned in the war on drugs, and with 350 million guns out there, you're not going to be able to pass a law and say, hey, we want to ban this, and be able to stop that. So what I want to talk to you about is an opportunity here. I want to offer the City Council the opportunity to reach together with County Council to impanel a commission of mental health, law enforcement, and public safety experts to look at this whole situation in total and decide how can we best protect the citizens of the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County and not violate the law or violate our oaths. Because what happens is the people of Squirrel Hill, who you're trying to take and protect, once this legislation is tossed, they'll be no better for it. If we want a lasting legacy, let's do something that's going to make an impact. Let's address mental health. 75% of all mass shootings are committed by somebody that is mentally ill, has exhibited symptoms, or is currently or in the past been in treatment. In Allegheny County, we spent $101 million last year treating 75,000 individuals. We have a waiting list that is huge. This is the crisis. By addressing that, we can actually stop people from going out and doing that.
Thanks, Councilman.
Thank you for your time, Council members. Thank you, President Kraus.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilman. Okay, welcome.
Sir, can you begin with your last name?
McCullough, MCC.
Okay. Bear with me, if you would, please. Mr. McCullough. Jason, welcome.
Thank you.
Jason
McCullough, live in the Point Breeze neighborhood on the Reverend Berger side of the line. Lifelong resident of Pittsburgh, which is now almost 51 years. I've come down to support you in this effort. I applaud your efforts. I applaud your courage to face this, the legal challenge you might have. And many of us will support you and re-elect you because of this action. My only gripe is I don't think it goes quite far enough. I would like to see somewhere in the law stating that the seller of the weapon, if they choose to sell to somebody that commits a crime with that very weapon within a short period of time, a year, 3 years, is also criminally liable for that action. I think it's the only way to stop this epidemic. It's the only way to put the responsibility on the people that are profiting from this epidemic and to come up with solutions of how to determine who is a responsible gun owner and who is not. So you can write all the laws in the world. You have small borders here in Pittsburgh. People can violate them outside this border and have that part of the law apply both inside and outside sellers of these weapons. But thank you. Thank you for your time and
Jason,
thank you for your courage.
Appreciate it.
Have we exhausted our list of registered speakers? It appears we have. Do we have any further registered speakers? Okay, we have exhausted the list of registered speakers, which closes our registered speakers, and we invite all of those that remain. You'll have 1 minute to address the council. I would just like to forewarn you that minute goes really fast. And you're welcome to line up, and we'll take you one at a time. Sir, do you wish to start? We'll need again your name and the municipality, township, or borough in which you reside.
Mike Cornell, Harmony, former resident of Brookline.
Okay. Welcome.
So, city councilmen and women, no offense, but your bills are worse than useless. They don't address root causes. You are giving vulnerable and scared people false hope that they will stop mass shootings. They won't. These laws would not have stopped the Squirrel Hill shooter, and you know it. They won't stop the next shooting. Once you pass these bills, what will you say to your people after the next shooting? Hey, it did no good, but at least we did something? These laws are only giving your people false hope. With all due respect, stop this illegal charade and look for real solutions to protect our schools and our houses of worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay. Welcome. Thank you. Your name and the township, municipality, or borough you live in.
My name is Ward Sutton. I've been a resident of the city of Pittsburgh since 1971.
Welcome.
I'm a veteran. I served 68 to 71. I'm a life NRA member. I am also an NRA certified instructor and range officer. I am also a duly elected official. And although I realize that stupidity is not a crime, after hearing the reading of the legislation, I think maybe some legislation ought to criminalize it. I suggest some categories. Common stupidity, the only thing that common sense will address. Misdemeanor or summary stupidity, misdemeanor stupidity.
Your time's expired, Ward.
And felony stupidity.
The minute goes really fast, and thank you. Sir, welcome. Okay, name in the municipality, township, or borough in which you reside.
Good evening. My name is Andrew C. Caswell. I live in Crafton.
Thank you.
We're living in a culture where the criminal element has no fear of consequences or repercussions for their actions. Many criminals will take a life and have taken lives and never think twice about it. You see homicides daily on local news that do not receive the attention a mass shooter does. I do not fear the mass shooters, I do the common criminal. I've lived in PA my whole life, moved to Pittsburgh 8 years ago. Since that time, I've had my car broken into, my girlfriend's car's been stolen, neighborhood house has been broken and robbed in the middle of the day. A drive-by shooting took place a block from my house, and police did not bring justice to the victims or the criminals for these events. It is impossible for every citizen of Pittsburgh to have a police officer protecting him at all times. This is why I need to protect myself, but those rights are trying to be stripped from me with these new laws. The best leaders lead by example. So the example that the mayor and the governor is...
Goes very fast, I know. You might want to condense your thoughts. Welcome. May we have your name and the municipality, township, or borough?
My name is Austin Savat. I am a resident of Stowe Township, and I have a really short message for you guys. Thanks. I'd like everyone's attention, because I want to see a show of hands here. Under your proposed legislation, well, conveniently the officer walked away who's had the patience of a saint all night. The handgun on his hip, raise your hands, is that going to remain legal within the city of Pittsburgh? Show of hands. You could show hands.
Council doesn't engage.
Under the current legislation, it does not.
Council doesn't engage.
No, it does not.
Council doesn't engage.
Okay, that's fine. It has a magazine over 10 rounds. It's a semi-automatic weapon. It's capable of holding a magazine of over 10 rounds. Under the way your legislation is currently written, I'm going to go to the locker room, retrieve my firearm, which is identical to that one, and I would be in violation. Is it going to be changed so that I will not be violating it?
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker then, please. Hi. Name and where you reside, please.
Michael Deal, Elizabeth Township.
Thanks, Michael.
I just want to open-ended question here about how you would like to be perceived as council members, because here's the way I see that you are being perceived. You're siding with the criminals, making a law that they don't care about. He didn't care about murdering people. Okay, what makes you think the next guy is going to care if you care that he has 14 rounds in his magazine? It's ridiculous. They're not law-abiding citizens. You have police departments here that people are leaving, and your mayor wants to leave them in the lurch and is kicking the can down the road for their contract. Meanwhile, they went into the Tree of Life not even a couple months ago and risked their lives with the Allegheny County SWAT, and you're talking about cutting their pay? It definitely seems like you guys are more interested in the rights of the criminals than you are the people who pay your wages. If that's the way you want to be perceived, proceed.
Michael. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay. Can we have your name, where you reside, please?
Jim Carrollton, North Hills.
Thank you, Jim.
Good evening, Council of Tyrants. You clearly don't care about the Second Amendment, nor the Fourth, the Fifth, or the 14th. This gentleman's firearm, as these gentlemen before me already stated, that's an illegal firearm if this passes. Not only that one, but the two that have been protecting you all night up in that window. The dreaded AR-15. You're all human beings just like I am. Why do you get special protection? I relinquish my time.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, welcome.
My name is Daniel Hillard, and I live in the North Hills as well.
Thanks, Daniel.
I think it's pretty clear that a lot of people have opinions. A lot of them were emotional, and they were for all these bans. On the ones that were factual were against it. So I hope you take that into consideration and don't waste taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, welcome.
Hi, my name is Michael Salina. I'm from Butler, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Michael.
This is my daughter. She was beaten up by her fiance, and you're going to handicap her, okay, by taking her right to bear an arm and protect herself away from her. It took the state police an hour to get to where she was at, and the paramedics another 45 minutes on top of that. It took me 45 minutes to track this person down, and when I finally got a hold of the state, this is a convicted felon. It took them 2 hours to get there and arrest him. You want to handicap our kids, and you have had a smug smirk on your face all night long, everybody that's come up here. I'm disgusted at this council because the mayor's not even here. Where is he? He's the man that stood up and said, I'll face conviction, but he's not here. Where is he? He doesn't have the guts to be here because he didn't want to hear the truth.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
God bless everyone.
Yep. Okay, we need your name and where you reside, please.
Good to go?
Yep.
Karlyn VanBaan, Northside, Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Colin.
3 things to say. Number 1, if we're going to ban guns for the bad people that use these guns, why aren't we banning all cars for the drunk drivers? Number 2, why are we not addressing mental health the way it should be addressed? We are pumping psychiatric SSRIs into the teenage age group, and from what I've seen growing up, these people are struggling in their life mentally, and now they have access to guns, and these are the people that are causing these mass shootings. And number 3, why is the Second Amendment being infringed upon? It's an amendment. It cannot be infringed upon your erroneous bills that you can just propose. You cannot do that. It is against everything that we've got, believe in this country. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Colin. Okay. Name and where you reside, please.
My name is Michael Frederick. I reside in Northside, Pittsburgh, PA. Proud gun owner for AK-47s and over 28,000 rounds of ammunition.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what you guys are proposing here is completely illegal, and it's fine to sit there in the ivory tower and just lay down these laws like you guys are in charge of everything, going against the United States Constitution, the PA state constitution, making our law-abiding police officers go up to our doorsteps and confiscate our firearms. If you are so erroneous to come up with these laws and just blankly legislate, then it should be you guys coming up to our doors one by one, taking our firearms. Put your money where your mouth is. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Michael. Next speaker, please. Hi.
Good evening, Council. My name is Nestor Hernandez. I'm from Smock in Fayette County.
Welcome.
I work in a hospital, major hospital in the Pittsburgh too, not too far from the Tree of Life Synagogue. I want to quote Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, and I want you all guys to hear this. He said this to Governor Wolf at his swearing in. May God grant you recognition that the vast majority of the people are good. Their goodness will always overcome others' hate in speech or deed. Okay, being said that, this is not an issue about gun legislation. This is about mental illness, focusing on social media. Those websites like gab.com that feed into this radical thinking that you could hate somebody because of their religious belief, because of their faith, their color, their sexual orientation, whatever it may be. Focusing on that mental illness is on that. As far as...
Thank you. Time has expired. Thanks very much. Okay, welcome. Name and where you reside, please.
My name is Kevin Cowie. I'm a resident of Allegheny County.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you all for being here. I know I can't change your mind in the minute I'm allowed to speak, but I'm just here to voice my extreme disapproval of the measures that you have proposed and to pledge whatever meager resources I may have to fight this unconstitutional rule. And I know that there are 1,000 others behind me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Emily Cowie. I'm from Avalon Borough.
Thanks, Emily.
Not only are the proposed gun laws illegal, but history and so many other locations have proven to us that legislating law-abiding citizens and their ability to carry guns does not make things safer. I heard a lot of people tonight misunderstanding what the proposed laws entail. This would even take away my teeny tiny personal carry weapon. Please don't take that away. Please don't violate our Constitution. Please consider the precedents that you are setting for future generations and for future council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Damian Bounce, Westview. Although I'm outside, excuse me?
Well, welcome, Damian.
Oh, Damian Bounce, Westview. And although I'm outside the city limits, I did want to address my concern that the verbiage contained inside the legislation is sufficiently ambiguous that selective enforcement would be a big problem, and that if it's not your intention to disarm the vast majority of gun owners and their firearms inside the city limits, that this legislature, as it's worded, is definitely going to facilitate that happening. For example, a telescopic stock is a matter of not lethality but comfort. How else would you suppose my 5-foot mother would engage in sport shooting? A threaded barrel is for a courtesy to people around you whenever you're at the range. Anyone who's heard it outside of a Jason Bourne movie is going to be able to attest to this. It's going to ban everything except for repeaters and 6-shooters with selective enforcement, which is my biggest concern with the legislation. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. Okay, hi, welcome.
My name is J.D. King. I'm from Hickory, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, J.D.
It's terrible that we only get 1 minute when the madman at the Tree of Life had 9. I was born at McGee. I lived half my life in Pittsburgh. What the city council is trying to do is criminal. We expect those who we vote into office to uphold the law, not break it. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines tyrant as an absolute ruler unrestrained by law or constitution. What sits before me are literal tyrants by definition, only missing their cowardly mayor, who, for the second time, refused to show his face in the face of opposition. In no way will we comply with your unjust and clearly illegal laws. I hope you know that at this point.
Okay, JD, thank you. Okay, welcome. Name and where you reside.
My name is Reese Smith, and I live in Crafton, PA.
Reese?
Yes.
Thanks, welcome.
I came here, I did not originally come here to speak, but I instead decided that I want to tell you that students are not necessarily afraid. We do not watch the news and see mass shootings and go into school thinking it can happen to us. We had 2 bomb threats this year. We came in on those days, and pretty much everyone agreed there was a 0% chance that we were going to be blown up. If with 2 bomb threats we still don't fear being blown up, why would we fear being shot when there hasn't been any threats at all? Furthermore, the things we did fear on those days of the bomb threats was not the being threatened by the bomb itself, but the bag checks and the erosion of our privacy. The bag checks they had caused increased bottlenecks, which caused students to stand outside in the freezing cold while they checked our bags. Not only that, but it gave us fear that soon we would have to pass through metal detectors and be subjected to bag searches every day and have to have clear bags.
Time's up, Bruce. Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, welcome. May I have your name and where you reside?
Sammy Badasnik, Greenfield.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you so much to every single law enforcement member. I appreciate everything you do deeply. I'm Sammy, and I am a senior at Hill Academy of Pittsburgh, K-12 school, Jewish school. I lost a former teacher in Tree of Life Synagogue. That incident means a lot to me. Using that tragic incident to be so selfish and to advance your political agenda is disgraceful. It's a shame on you, and may God help us all. Thank you for the time.
Yep, Sammy, thank you. So then, I believe we've exhausted the list of unregistered speakers. Okay, seeing no further speakers, I would only like to offer up our most sincere thanks to everyone that came to speak this evening, and sincerely, you might not think I really thought this, but you conducted yourselves really as ladies and gentlemen in what it can be a very difficult conversation for us to have, and though I may not have always been as gracious as I like to be, I do want to thank you for coming in and remaining respectful and in the light of a difficult conversation to have. I also would like to thank our public safety officials. We had extensive communications with our public safety director, our Bureau of Police, our chief of fire, Mr. Jones, EMS, our law department, our special events are also our clerk's office and our council members. This was a huge undertaking, which... Thank you. It was a huge undertaking for everyone that was involved to make certain that we provided what you needed to come in here and address your government, it was all made possible for broadcast by our Cable Bureau, and we want to recognize them as well too. With that, I believe we would entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing. In a second, and all in favor? Aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. You guys did